were killed, displaced. They were also part of the reason why I had to live in exile for more than a decade, far away from my family, my friends, and my country.
Servants of the regime were privileged, of course, but in Assad's Syria, almost everyone lived in fear. And for those who are now on the losing side of history, the fear goes on. Adnan just wanted a normal life, but he's known nothing but war. Thanks for listening. Assignment was presented and produced by me, Tim Hewell.
That was Assignment from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho, and this is CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and you're on CBC. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. Thank you for joining us wherever you're joining us from this morning. A special welcome and good morning if you're in Evacuee and you're here in southern Manitoba and you're joining us as well. So nice to have you with us. We do have smoke in the air this morning. You'll smell it in Winnipeg as soon as you're outside, and those air quality statements all around the province, especially in the fire-affected areas. And you can just see a shot on YouTube now of our live stream, and you're seeing it kind of hanging low in the air. Thanks for being here. The morning show's on until 8:37 a.m. Let's say good morning to the team. So let's start, actually, with YouTube. Our producer is Brad Lillies. There he is saying hello to you. Our director this morning for the show is Sierra Sanders. She'll be on covering the commute. Good morning, Sierra. Also, good morning to Abby Adeyemi, our senior tech, who is behind the controls of the program and will be on the air covering more on the weather through the show. All right, let's get to Heather Wells for the day's news headlines and developing stories in Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the Manitoba Nurses Union is speaking out against a provincial order to relax some labor mobility rules. Health Minister Uzoma Evacuee ordered the College of Registered Nurses to drop a rule that nursing applicants from other provinces first prove they have worked in Canada. Now, it did that once, almost 3 years ago, and when it did, 2 patients died and there were 35 complaints of gross nursing incompetence. The college later reinstated that rule. We're going to hear more about what people have to say about Uzoma Evacuee's recommendation. And the future of an affordable housing project in Transcona is in question. The Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation applied for $25 million from the Federal Affordable Housing Fund. Last week, the executive director learned that fund was out of money. We'll hear what happens next in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
In our forecast for Winnipeg today, sunny and a high of 26 in case you're, 23 in case you're curious, and widespread smoke. I was ahead to tomorrow already. That's a nicer day. But today, widespread smoke and 23. Brandon, mix of sun and cloud, high 22. And then in Thompson, sunny and hazy and a high of 16. So in the first hour of the program, we're going to be talking actually about avian flu today. There's a question that's come up about to cull or not to cull. We'll check in with an ostrich farm in BC. And of course, we will also hear from Flin Flon evacuees as we continue to cover the fires in Manitoba. Stay with us.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
The director Wes Anderson is one of those filmmakers where you can see one frame of his movie and know immediately that it's him. Behind all those aesthetic decisions are films about death and anxiety and family dynamics. So Wes Anderson will be here to talk about his films and what's really behind them.
We tend to be doing something that's kind of bigger than we even have the means to do.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Israeli forces have recovered the bodies of Canadian Judy Weinstein-Hagey and her husband Gadi. It is more than a year since their deaths were confirmed. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a statement. He says it was the result of a special operation conducted in Gaza last night. The CBC's Crystal Gomansing has more from Jerusalem.
The recovery and return of the remains of Gad Hagey and Judy Weinstein-Hagey breaking across Israel. Members of their kibbutz near Oz, near the border with Gaza, shared a heartfelt statement, remembering Judy as a poet, a creative spirit, and a woman deeply committed to peace and coexistence. Gad, a gifted musician committed to the land. The couple was killed on their kibbutz. They were taking a walk the morning Hamas and its affiliates stormed the border on October 7th in a murderous rampage. She called for help after her husband was shot. Their remains recovered after more than 600 days in Gaza during a special military operation, according to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He said, "We will not rest, nor will we be silent until we return home all of our hostages, the living and the deceased." Judy grew up in Toronto. She went to Israel as a kibbutz volunteer, where she met her husband. The Hostages Family Forum says her relatives have asked for privacy, writing in a statement, "Their return is painful and heartbreaking, but brings healing to our uncertainty." Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, Jerusalem.
U.S. President Donald Trump is bringing back a controversial policy from his first term. Trump is announcing a full travel ban on citizens of 12 countries and a partial ban on 7 additional countries. Steve Futterman has the details.
Trump's order is reminiscent of a similar travel ban during his first term.
Very simply, we cannot have open migration from any country where we cannot safely and reliably vet and screen those who seek to enter the United States.
For 12 countries, including Afghanistan, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen, the travel ban is nearly total. 7 other countries will have a partial ban, including Cuba, Laos, and Venezuela.
In the 21st century, we've seen one terror attack after another carried out by foreign visa overstayers from dangerous places all over the world.
There are likely to be challenges in the courts, but Trump's first travel ban in 2017 was generally upheld. The Trump order specifically exempts athletes and coaches taking part in next year's World Cup soccer tournament and the 2028 Olympics. The ban is set to take effect on Monday. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
Marc Garneau, Canada's first person in space, is dead. Garneau also served as a Liberal MP and cabinet minister from 2008 to 2023. Marina von Stackelberg has more.
We have ignition and liftoff.
In 1984, Marc Garneau made history as the first Canadian in space after answering a newspaper ad, a decision he said changed his life. In an interview with CBC's The House last year, Garneau talked about listening to classical music while aboard the Challenger spaceship.
While you're gazing at your planet as you're orbiting high above it and going around is just, it's, I think, the closest thing to being in heaven.
In 2008, Garneau became a Liberal Member of Parliament, then Minister of Transport and Foreign Affairs. He said he wished all politicians could have the perspective he gained from outer space.
We are surrounded by the blackness, the void of space, and that this is not only the cradle of humanity, it's our only home, and we have to take care of it.
Marc Garneau was 76. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
Competition to build Canada's new fleet of submarines is heating up. Formal bidding has not officially started, but there is pressure for Ottawa to offer the multi-billion-dollar contract to NATO allies. As Murray Brewster reports, Canada's options don't stop there.
We have been building ships for the Spanish Navy for the last 400 years.
Pablo Menendez is leading Spanish shipbuilder Navantia's efforts to sell Canada new submarines, specifically the S-80.
We have a contract with the Spanish Navy for 4 submarines, and we are really in negotiations to add 2 more. So we have a production line already that we can continue, and we can deliver, well, in our proposal, we offer 3 submarines to Canada before 2035.
Other allies are also clamoring for attention. Earlier this spring, CBC News revealed details of South Korea's $24 billion pitch. Now, Germany and Norway, 2 countries which Canada has already signed a strategic defense partnership. They want to sell the latest variant of the Type 212 design. Oliver Burkhardt with Germany's TKMS says there's something to be said for NATO partnerships, an argument that has become central to European pushback against the South Korean bid.
We're offering a real partnership, Navy to Navy, industry to industry, government to government. You're joining a family which is seminar.
Germany and Norway began building submarines together a few years ago, and the first boat will be in the water in 2028. Since Canada has never constructed submarines, it buys offshore. Each of the bidders pledged to establish a maintenance facility to sustain the boats and create Canadian jobs. There is no word on when the formal competition will get underway. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
And to wildfires in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, more than 30,000 people are on the move. Officials are starting to get a sense of the scale now of the damage so far. Cam McIntosh is in Prince Albert.
Pumping water for the firefight at the village of Denair Beach. Crews saw winds from Saskatchewan's Wildfire kick the lake up.
It creates its own wind. It's just insane.
Doorbell footage shows black smoke engulfing buildings as the fire blew in.
I can't even comprehend it.
Staying at a hotel in Prince Albert, Patsy Janae knows her brother's home is gone. She's not certain about hers, not far away.
I pray that I'll go home to a home.
A community of 700, full damage is yet to be assessed, but provincial officials are already saying
largest single area of value impact is in the Denair Beach area.
Fires also surround nearby Creighton and Flin Flon, Manitoba. Evacuated for a week now, the firefight, a physical and logistical battle. Flin Flon's mayor says they're having trouble getting food to firefighters.
They're within a couple of days of not being able to have enough food to provide to all these men.
Across Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, about 35,000 people in total are out of their homes, with hundreds of firefighters trying to contain what they can. In La Ronge, Saskatchewan, helicopters bombed the downtown with water. 2 businesses were lost, but the flames were pushed back. A victory for now, says Mayor Joe Hordaisky.
We still not out of the woods.
These fires still out of control and spreading, with little relief from the weather in sight. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Prince Albert.
There's a new push to improve fire safety in First Nations communities across the country, particularly when it comes to smoke alarms. Kwabino Oduro has the story.
I'm glad. I'll feel a lot better, a lot safer.
Laura McCumber now has a brand new smoke detector in her home in Garneau, south of Montreal. Manufacturer Kidé is donating thousands of the alarms to First Nations communities across the country. Firefighter Brandon Chubby is helping install them here.
I am noticing a bit of a lack of smoke detectors in homes. I guess mostly because protocols, rules have changed, the laws have changed, and certain things are now up to code and it requires more alarms, and I just don't think people are aware of that.
Most of the firefighting team here is made up of volunteers in the community of about 8,000 people. They say they respond to about 100 fire calls a year. According to the National Indigenous Fire Safety Council, Indigenous peoples make up 5% of the population in Canada, but 20% of deaths related to residential fires. Arnold Lazar is with the council.
We know that where the people are dying is in rural, underserved communities, living in housing that meets no standards without working smoke alarms.
Ganawage Fire Brigade Chief Wheezy Stacy says a lot of the calls they respond to are to their own families.
It makes my job very difficult at times because as a fire inspector as well, I spend a lot of my time trying to educate people on why being prepared is important.
The members of the fire brigade say they hope that these smoke detectors will help them keep people safe by getting them out in time and helping speed up their response, not just here in Ganawage, but across all First Nations. Kwabino Oduro, CBC News, Ganawage.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. Thanks for joining us on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. It is 6:10 a.m. and right now in Winnipeg it is already feeling a little bit smoky. Lots of air quality advisories across much of the province today due to the fires. Well, how long will it be? How long will it be? We're going to hear from an evacuee from Flin Flon saying they're desperate to go back home, but they are bracing for the worst and preparing to be away for the long haul. So we're going to hear that perspective when it comes to fire stories this hour. To other stories, to cull or not to cull, we're going to check in this morning on the story of an ostrich farm in British Columbia where hundreds of birds are slated to be destroyed to stop the spread of avian influenza. But first, remembering Marc Garneau with an interview that he did with one of our colleagues here at CBC Manitoba. Stay tuned for that. First, though, Heather Wells has your news headlines for this Thursday morning.
Good morning. Well, Federal Cabinet Minister Rebecca Chartrand harassed a former employee when she worked at RRC Polytech in Winnipeg. That is according to an external investigation commissioned by the college. Documents provided to CBC News show Chartrand was investigated in 2019 when she directed Indigenous strategy at Red River College. In December of that year, the investigation concluded her conduct amounted to harassment. In a statement, a spokesperson for Chartrand says she is committed to fostering a healthy work environment as a new federal cabinet minister. As thousands of wildfire evacuees are now staying in Winnipeg, a crucial task is making sure everyone gets fed. A group of local chefs are working together with the Canadian Red Cross to cook 1,250 meals a day. We're going to hear how that's going to work out. We'll hear from the coordinator coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, let's get into what's happening in our weather forecast. Abiadiemi joins us with those details. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Now, excluding Thompson and Churchill this morning, smoke will be affecting air quality from the north all the way down to the southern regions. We have smoke with hazy skies in the southern regions. The northern part, we're seeing cool skies, some clearing there, but mostly it's going to be smoky conditions. So if you're sensitive to smoke, I'd advise you to take care this morning. We have that special air quality statement in effect for much of the regions today, talking about western Manitoba, central Manitoba. Smoke is really causing poor visibility and hazy skies, and that can change quickly. Now, there's also that air quality warning impacting Winnipeg and surrounding area. We're talking about the Red River, the Pembina Valley, the Interlake, the Central, all the way down to the Parkland region. We're seeing smoke that will be staying thick. It's going to be moving in with the winds today, and it will stay with us into tomorrow morning. We will see some clearing by tomorrow afternoon, but while the eastern areas will stay smoky until the end of tomorrow. So if you can, avoid outdoor activities because this smoke will be coming with the winds. Now, conditions in Winnipeg at this time, 8 degrees outside. We're already seeing the smoke roll in. That can make the air hard to breathe and reduce your visibility. So you might want to take care as you go about your day. Temperatures in the city today will warm close to 23, 24 degrees, and that smoke will continue into the evening. Across board, we're seeing 8 degrees to 9 degrees in other regions down south, and most of the regions will also be getting to 23 degrees. The powerful influence Thompson, temperatures at this time between 2 and 4 degrees.
It looks like our next chance of showers isn't really, the systems will move in around Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday.
So hopefully it'll really dump on the province and not just here, of course, in the south. We need it in the north. But thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's get into what the morning commute is like all over the province. Sierra Sanders has popped in. Good morning.
Good morning. Obviously just kicking off the morning here on the show. So it is pretty quiet at the moment, especially on the commuter line. But if you're seeing anything out there that is slowing you down, you can give me a call on the commuter line. That's 204-788-3093.
Well, as you just heard on World Report, Marc Garneau has died. He was just 16 years old when he decided to join the Navy, and little did he know that it would send his life on an extraordinary trajectory. He went on to become Canada's first astronaut. He eventually was a cabinet minister. Garneau died yesterday at the age of 76 after a short illness, according to his family. Now, in November, he actually spoke with CBC Manitoba's Bruce Layden about his life, his politics, and how going to space changed his perspective on the world. And we've pulled that interview this morning. Have a listen.
It does, because when you see Earth from space and go around it every 90 minutes, you begin to think about the bigger issues, the planetary or the global issues, if I can put it that way, because you look at the Earth's atmosphere, which all of humanity shares, and you realize how thin that wafer of air is above our heads and how we have to take care of it. And you see our oceans, which we share. You unfortunately see the damage which humans, sometimes deliberately, sometimes inadvertently, are creating or causing down on Earth. I saw forest fires. I saw soil erosion, washing soil down rivers into the ocean because of deforestation. I saw large clouds of smog, sort of yellowish smog over places like California, the Mediterranean, China, even Canada. And you realize our human presence down on the planet is changing this planet. And we live on a planet that is not inexhaustible in its resources or infinitely resilient. And you think about these things when you're up there, as opposed to it being quite as sort of striking when you're down on the surface of the earth and your world is really the 5 kilometers around you. So it does change your view. And you think about the existential challenges that humanity is facing with respect to loss of biodiversity, with respect to the fact that we can't seem to get along with each other on the surface of the planet. We're always fighting each other. Those things go through your head when you're looking at more or less the whole planet. That stays with you afterwards.
And we're almost running out of time here, and I've been selfishly talking about your experience as an astronaut only because it seems to interest me more than politics, but you've had a very full political life as well, continuing your career in the public, 15 years as a public servant, and you've just recently retired. How do you feel about that experience and that extra chapter of your life, turning to politics and having a rather full career there?
I have to say it was a wonderful experience. I had the opportunity to serve Canadians in a different way, my riding specifically, and I had the honor of being a cabinet minister on a couple of portfolios, transportation and foreign affairs. And politics is a rough business. I often tell people when I was an astronaut, everybody liked me. In politics, you have to develop a bit of a thick skin because people feel entitled, as they should, to tell you what they think of your policies, and that's part of being in politics. I've always, of course, encouraged people to be civil and respectful of it, but it was a wonderful experience overall. Things didn't turn out quite the way I wanted all things to turn out, but I really, really felt privileged to be able to serve Canadians.
Well, and congratulations for that career that you had as a Liberal that maybe didn't always agree with what was happening with your boss.
Yeah, and that happens.
Yeah.
Nobody agrees 100% with their own boss.
Mm-hmm. But one more thing I wanted to touch on, because you mentioned in your book that there's a real importance, and probably due to your experiences up in space and then down here on the ground through political life, that being a grandfather is one of the most important things for you.
Absolutely. And, it's the first time you begin to realize that there's a generation beyond your own children. It gives you a perspective of the way life evolves. And I felt the same way when my parents were gone, that I was now the oldest generation. And it's a beautiful moment in many ways. And it makes you feel that wonderful grandchildren is moving things in the right direction.
And that will be most of your focus on this next chapter now that you're fully retired from public life?
Absolutely. That's my primary priority now that I'm a retired person.
Well, I wish you all the best in that endeavor. And I want to thank you for joining us this morning.
My pleasure, Bruce.
So that was now the late Marc Garneau, Canada's first Canadian astronaut in space. I think I misspoke on the way into that tape, of course, but longtime Liberal MP and cabinet minister as well. We pulled that from the archives this morning to remember him. He was speaking with CBC's Bruce Layden. That was just last November. Marc Garneau died yesterday after a short illness, according to his family. He was 76 years old.
They challenged Manitoba high school students to champion the environment with a video. Now you can see the results. The Climate Change Connections Youth Video Challenge, sponsored by CBC. Get inspired by the winning videos from River East Collegiate, St. John's Ravenscourt, and Louis Riel Arts and Technology by visiting cbc.ca/Manitoba/community to watch.
6:21 a.m. is the time right now. It is Thursday morning as the smoke settles over Manitoba. Lots of it in the air here in Winnipeg today. A high of 23. We have widespread smoke for us. Hard to believe that it is Thursday, June 5th already. We're clicking through the month of June. It's for those students who are not evacuated from their schools. It's your last month and heading into the summer months here. Next on the show, let's talk about something that's been in the news, but we haven't touched this in a while. I'm talking about avian flu. After an outbreak of avian influenza last year, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, you might recall, declared a group of ostrich farms in British Columbia had to be, quote, depopulated. In other words, killed. But since then, the farmers have been fighting that order. Katie Pesitny's parents, own that farm in BC. Here's a short clip of her. She spoke to the CBC about her family's birds.
They're funny and they're goofy and they have personalities and funny hairdos and they love to roll around volleyballs like little ostrich eggs and they love music. And I'm here to protect them and I'm here to protect my mom and the livelihoods that are at stake.
Joining us to talk about the latest on avian influenza is Andre Picard. Joining us via Zoom this morning, our health columnist, health columnist for the Globe and Mail. But with us on CBC, nice to have you with us.
Good morning.
Good morning. So culling birds because of avian flu has become a sad fact for a lot of Canadian poultry farmers. What is different about ostriches?
I think that's the fundamental question in this case. Are ostriches different from any other poultry? And if they are, should they not be subject to the rules? So the Canadian Food Inspection Agency argues essentially a bird is a bird is a bird. H5N1 is very dangerous if it spreads. So we cull birds when there's even one case. So there's been 14.5 million birds culled in the last couple of years in Canada. And the difference with these ostriches is this farm is fighting it. They're making these arguments that they're different, etc. So that's what distinguishes them. But scientifically, it appears a bird is a bird.
Now, this has gained international attention from the likes of U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Can you tell us more about what he said and what you make of the attention and how it might be adding to these questions we're asking?
Yeah, this is getting a lot of media attention. We in the media, we like these quirky things. Ostriches are certainly a quirky thing. It's not as interesting as covering 500 chicken farms that have been depopulated. So it stands out. RFK Jr. in particular, I think we should be concerned about. We know that he has some wacky views on vaccination and such. And on on influenza, he believes that it should just be allowed to run wild. And then the survivors of the birds, if there are any, would be super chickens that could be breeded. So this kind of a view is very out in left field and concerns infectious disease experts. They say if we allowed H5N1 to run wild in birds, in any type of bird, it really greatly increases the risk that it goes to other animals and to humans.
You're echoing what we heard here at CBC Manitoba Radio Noon just earlier. Last month had an interview actually about this with a local veterinarian talking about the fact that it was dangerous, this idea that, just let it run wild, and was talking about the need for culling in their perspective at least. Why might it be important to get rid of a group of animals like this, even if they don't appear sick? Can you give us the science behind that?
Yeah, there's a number of reasons. It is a highly contagious virus. It's novel, meaning nobody has immunity against it, not any bird or person. So if you cull the entire flock or the wobble, a wobble of ostriches, then it allows quick containment. So it reduces greatly the risk of spreading elsewhere on the farm or to other farms, reduces the risk of human infection. It really reduces the risk of mutations emerging, and that's really important. We don't want this virus to become easier to infect other mammals, including humans, and it makes decontamination easier. If you get rid of everything, you can clean out and start over. So it may seem cruel to kill all the birds on a farm, but it's actually efficient, it's cost effective, and it's best for human and animal health.
One of the arguments put forward in an attempt to save the birds is that the remaining ostriches are immune. How likely is that?
Well, this argument has been put forward repeatedly that these birds are immune, that they have stronger immune systems, etc. Again, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency says there's not any evidence of this. The fact that the birds are alive doesn't mean that they're not infected. It doesn't mean that they can't spread it to other birds. It doesn't mean they can't get infected from wild birds, which is how this is spread. We know about 68 of the birds have already died. Roughly 400 are still around. But this whole question of immunity, there's not really any evidence of it. It would be nice, but there's no evidence of it.
Thanks for walking us through the truth and facts of the story, Andre. Appreciate having you on with the program this morning.
Thanks, a pleasure.
That was Andre Picard on with us live on CBC via Zoom, health columnist for the Globe and Mail. It is 6:26 a.m. You're on CBC Manitoba here. Thanks for joining us. The morning show on through 8:37 with you. I continue to say this morning, and I'll keep repeating it, a special hello to the evacuees in Manitoba. The Premier of Manitoba will be here later for a full feature interview coming up after 8. So, of course, we'll get the latest of the wildfires, but also understand what has been working and what lessons we've learned about what we might need to do better in this moment and in future moments, unfortunately, that we're going to face like this. So stay tuned. Wapkunu will be here live later. Right now, a bit of music before the news. This is from three brothers that make up the foundation that is Finn. That's a Winnipeg band you might have caught out and about. Their album is called Already Gone. And off that album, here's a tune about growing up. It's named after the street they grew up on. This is Banning Street on CBC.
Back to Banning Street, the big white house where souls would meet. Those 18 years, woolly carpets soaked in tears from all those nights of being near. Then we grew up, saw the past go up for sale, each board and nail by the sea and rail. Each house it glows, frozen in the ember flows of time itself, for all we know.
Nice little local ode to the West End in Winnipeg. That's Finn, local band with Banning Street. I love that turn of phrase. I feel my feet going back to Banning Street. Smoky right now in Winnipeg. Coming up, we have business news here on CBC. And today, Neil Kumar is in for the report. He's going to talk about the Canadian dollar that's strengthened to an 8-month high. We're going to hear more about why. Right now, though, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is 8 degrees. It's a cool start to the day. Winnipeg is under an air quality warning from those fires burning in the north. We do have widespread smoke in the forecast, a high today of 23. Newly appointed federal cabinet minister Rebecca Chartrand harassed one of her employees when she worked at RRC Polytech in Winnipeg. That is according to an external investigation commissioned by Red River College and conducted by a Winnipeg law firm. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
Rebecca Chartrand was elected in April as a new MP for the Northern Manitoba riding of Churchill-Kiewit-Newcasky. In May, Prime Minister Marc Carney appointed Chartrand to cabinet. According to documentation provided to CBC News, Chartrand was investigated in 2019 when she was the Director of Indigenous Strategy at Red River College. In December of that year, the investigation concluded Chartrand's conduct amounted to personal harassment of one of her employees. Chartrand resigned from the college the same month. The former employee, who CBC is not identifying, said she tried to make her experience known to Liberal Party officials.
I did not want what happened to me happen to anybody in Ottawa.
In a statement, a spokesperson for Chartrand said the minister is committed to fostering a healthy work environment for everyone in the workplace. A spokesperson for RRC Polytech said the college does not discuss personnel matters. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The government and College of Registered Nurses of Manitoba are butting heads again over nurse training. The health minister has ordered the college to no longer require nursing applicants from other provinces to prove they have worked in Canada. The college says it waived that rule almost 3 years ago and says that led to 2 deaths and 35 complaints of gross nursing incompetence. Minister Uzoma Asseguera says the government takes those complaints seriously, but needs to find a way to get more nurses to the province.
We can do both. We can make sure that patients are receiving safe patient care and also wholeheartedly welcome internationally educated nurses to join the front lines, which is why we've worked with the college and taken very real action to do just that.
Asseguera says extra training is the solution. The college recently reinstituted the requirement that nurses prove that they had worked in Canada in order to protect patient safety. Much of Manitoba is under air quality warnings or special air quality statements. Much of the province continues to be under extreme fire danger. The province says 27 active wildfires are still burning. A group of Winnipeg chefs, meanwhile, is banding together to help cook for the thousands of wildfire evacuees now staying in Winnipeg. Brandy Beaubier with Community Helpers Unite says the Canadian Red Cross has reached out to her in the past for help with feeding displaced people. They are now tasked with cooking 1,250 meals daily for the next 2 weeks.
We needed to start feeding 300 folks at the Century Arena. Friday afternoon, they called me and said they're opening this super site evacuation center at Leela Soccer Complex. We went to work right away to coordinate services between 6 different restaurant partners and chef partners.
The chefs are serving everything from salads to barbecue to pastas. The global organization World Central Kitchen is also partnering with local groups to feed wildfire evacuees. The future of an affordable housing project in Transcona is in question. The Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation applied for $25 million from the Federal Affordable Housing Fund. Last week, Executive Director James Heinrichs learned that fund was out of money. He says losing that money could delay the project, putting other government funding at risk.
Everything has to come to fruition in order for it to all work. And now with the announcement that was just recently made of there's no additional funds through the Affordable Housing Fund, now we're kind of left of what do we do?
The project would create 154 units, including deeply affordable and accessible units. The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation tells CBC News it is working to process as many applications as possible. A Winnipeg woman is suing 2 doctors she says put her at risk of premature death. The woman was told she had 6 months to live after cancer had metastasized through her body. But in a lawsuit, she claims the spread of cancer from her lungs to other organs could have been prevented. Last year, the woman had a CT scan done to screen for lung cancer. After the results came, she was diagnosed with other respiratory diseases, but not cancer. The lawsuit says symptoms worsened, a second scan was done, and she was diagnosed with cancer in January. The woman claims her cancer could have been treatable had it been diagnosed after that first scan. She is suing for general damages, including medical costs. None of the allegations have been tested in court, and no statement of defense has been filed. Well, Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final goes to Edmonton.
McDavid, it's gone! Leon Draisaitl, Game 1 hero!
Oiler forward Leon Draisaitl with the winner in overtime as Edmonton defeated the Florida Panthers last night 4-3. The Oilers were down 3-1 at one point, but rallied to take the series opener. Game 2 in this best of 7 is set for tomorrow night, once again in Edmonton. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I had the Google moment this morning with that. I made it to the end of the game. It went into overtime and I went to bed, so I didn't know who won.
And then you see it and your eyes just pop open.
Yeah, and then it was fun. And then I watched the replay of the goal and stuff. I'm going for Connor McDavid. I'm one of those Canadians right now.
You know, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, love the guy.
Yeah, so we'll see. And gosh, it's pretty to watch them score goals. They've just got the moves, right? Sometimes when I watch Connor McDavid, I feel like I'm a kid again, and I have to remind myself. A lot of what he does doesn't remind me of Gretzky. Very different players, but the way he approaches the net on a breakaway does. There's something about the way he moves the puck.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Hev.
It must be that Oiler jersey.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's that and the fact that he's 97 versus 99, or maybe it's just my little kid Winnipeg brain remembering when they came here and watching a lot of Gretzky in his heyday. All right. We'll see what happens in Game 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get into what's happening right now in the weather forecast. Of course, we are in a state of emergency. The fires continue to burn. Thoughts are with all of those that are helping on the front lines, the firefighters, all the volunteers. We're going to hear from an evacuee this half hour on the program. But smoke is affecting a lot of us in Manitoba. So here is Abby Adiemi with our regional forecast.
Yeah, good morning once again. A special air quality statement in place for much of western Manitoba. We're talking about Brandon and all the way down to almost the powerful influence surrounding areas, while air quality warning is in effect for Winnipeg and the Interlake region all the way down to Dauphin. We will see air quality being poor in that area. Smoke will be sticking around, lingering all the way into tomorrow in most of those regions. Then we'll start to see some clearing by tomorrow evening. Current conditions in Winnipeg, 8 degrees under hazy skies. We already have that smoke sweeping into the city. The air quality warning means visibility will be poor in some areas. The air may be hard to breathe for some people with health concerns, and the winds are light coming from the west. So you might want to take care. Today we'll be seeing mostly sunny conditions. We warm up to 23 degrees. The Pembina Valley region, similar to Winnipeg, from Morden, Winkler, Alton, and Morris, temperatures hovering around 6-7 degrees at this time. Also, thick smoke will be sweeping in, causing poor air quality and low visibility for folks in that area, and that will stay heavy for today into tomorrow morning. High will be around 23. In the Western region, we're seeing Brandon enjoying some mainly sunny conditions at this time, 7 degrees. However, smoky skies already sweeping in also, and that will be reducing visibility in that part of the province we have that special air quality statement in effect due to the fire from northern Manitoba. Limited outdoor times if possible. You see a high of 22 degrees today. In the Parkland region, Dauphin is at 1 with some misty conditions. Also very poor air quality from the smoke in that region, causing reduced visibility. Today we'll see a mix of sun and clouds, a small chance of afternoon showers and possible thunderstorms. High will reach 22 with mild winds coming from the south. In the Interlake region, Gimli sits at 4 degrees at this time. We do have widespread smoke in that part of the province, also causing poor air quality and reduced visibility for folks in the Interlake region. Expect the smoke to remain thick and UC high near 23 degree. The powerful influence, we're seeing 3 degree and smoke warming up to 19. Thompson, it's at 0, partly cloudy, warming up to 16. At Churchill, it's at 3 degrees with mostly cloudy skies, warming up to a high of 8. Winnipeg at this time, 8 with smoke and hazy skies.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Sierra Sanders is directing, going to be with us on the morning team for the next couple of months, filling in for Corey, and she's here now with your commute.
Good morning. Still pretty quiet on the commuter line, so I assume things are running pretty smoothly out there. But just a reminder that wildfires in eastern and northern Manitoba are affecting highways and travel. So make sure to check Manitoba 511 before you head out for any closures or incidents on provincial roads. But if anything out there is slowing you down, you can call me on the CBC commuter line. That is 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks there, Sierra. Let's get to Neil Kumar. Speaking of filling in, he's here actually for Crystal Lee Ramlicam with our business news this morning. Hi there, Neil.
Hi, how are you this morning?
I'm well. We're okay down here south in southern Manitoba. How are you doing today?
Doing okay. It's quite warm here, 17 degrees in Toronto right now.
All right. Is that warm for Toronto? We've had 30 here.
Yeah, I think so for the morning it is. It was a little bit of light rain to start the day, but now it's kind of okay. It's starting to warm up, so things are drying up.
Well, we might not share weather, but we do share a dollar in this country, so let's talk about it because it strengthened to a near 8-month high. What more can you tell us about this?
Yes, and the dollar strengthened against its U.S. counterpart yesterday as the Bank of Canada held back from cutting interest rates for a second straight policy meeting. Meantime, the U.S. dollar posted broad-based declines. Canadian currency was trading at 73.1 cents U.S. after reaching its strongest intraday level since October 9th. The Bank of Canada held its benchmark rate at 2.75% as expected, citing the need to probe the effects of U.S. trade policy. However, it said another cut might be necessary if the economy weakened in the face of tariffs. The downturn in Canada's services economy eased somewhat in May as firms grew more hopeful that trade and political uncertainty would decrease over the coming 12 months. Most investors feel that there is a 45% chance that the central bank resumes its easing campaign in July.
Let's go to another story. We're learning that Google has announced a fund that's aimed at improving artificial intelligence.
Yes, according to a press release from Google, the company will provide funding to 4 Canadian organizations that will provide training to improve AI skills and development across the country. The $13 million funding will go to a list of organizations that include the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute, the First Nations Technology Council, Skills for Change, as well as the Toronto Public Library. The Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute will provide foundational skills to post-secondary students across Canada. The First Nations Technology Council will train Indigenous students and provide AI-related resources that aim to increase the number of Indigenous workers in the tech sector. Also, Skills for Change will provide training for individuals coming from communities that deal with low levels of employment. And the Toronto Public Library will look to address the digital divide by launching AI upskilling initiatives.
And finally, before we look at the numbers this morning, Neil, there's a tech giant that just made a long-term nuclear deal. What's the story about?
That's right. Meta has signed a 20-year electricity deal with Constellation Energy, which is the largest nuclear power operator in the U.S., as its electricity usage swells amid the AI boom. Meta won't actually use the energy. Constellation will deliver electricity on behalf of Meta to the local grid, helping the tech giant maintain its decarbonization goals despite its AI energy gluttony. The agreement sets up Constellation's nuclear plant in Illinois to continue operating beyond 2027, when state subsidies are due to expire and will enable it to expand output at the site of 30 megawatts. Constellation's stock initially was up 9% following the announcement, but it closed slightly in the red.
What are the markets looking like today?
So in Asia, South Korean stocks were extended due to post-election gains. Japan is down, Hong Kong is up, Shanghai is up. In Europe, markets are higher ahead of the ECB decision. UK is up, Germany up, and France also up. Gold is up $23.90 to $3,422 US per ounce. Oil is up 14 cents to $62.99 US per barrel. And the Canadian dollar is up 0.2 cents to 73.1 cents US.
All right, thanks a lot, Neil.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
That's Neil Kumar filling in for Christely Roundlicam with Business News. 6:44 the time. Let's return to our fire stories in Manitoba. I can't imagine how tired evacuees must be, right? You go through all of these heightened emotions and then you're fleeing, perhaps. You're not sure what's happening. There's uncertainty. You're grateful, but then you're nervous. And then you're wondering how long you're going to be out of your home. Well, we have in this situation in this province right now, thousands of people in that situation. As we were sharing yesterday, there's just over 14,000 people that have now registered with the Red Cross. Everyone's encouraged to do so. And also, of course, the total number we've been sharing is 17,000 people have been moving from north to south to safety. And they're in communities all over the province and including into Ontario. So from northern Manitoba, for what's happening there right now, firefighters continue to scramble to protect Flin Flon because Flin Flon is surrounded on all sides of the city by fires, and that fire has joined together to create one large fire now. So the immediate fire that was around Sheridan and Flin Flon, the fire in Saskatchewan, they've all joined together. So you can see Riley Leitchuk's really good piece today at cbc.ca/Manitoba with the map, and it shows all of that activity as that fight continues. So I mentioned Saskatchewan. On the Saskatchewan side of the border, just a 20-minute drive away from Flin Flon, there's a village village of Denair Beach. And you might already have heard about this, of course, because we've been talking about it this week. It was devastated by wildfire. There were more than 400 homes and buildings destroyed there. For many Flin Flon residents, seeing the damage hits close to home. Those communities are very close together. Some people live on one side of the border and do business in Flin Flon, for example, back and forth. The mayor of Flin Flon, George Fontaine, says that no structures have burned in Flin Flon, but of course the community, as I mentioned, is still surrounded by flames. Now, people are going to be out for a while. That much we know. Residents like Leslie Beck say they're preparing for the worst. CBC Manitoba's Josh Crabb spoke with Leslie Beck yesterday to hear more about how she's holding up.
We're hearing from the mayor that people in Flin Flon should be prepared to be gone from their homes for a while. How are you dealing with that?
Well, myself personally, because we do have the two large dogs, just finding a place that we can kind of spread ourselves out a little bit so that we can, make a temporary home. We're feeling just a bit disconnected with everybody because we aren't, we have lots of group chats and stuff and lots of good connections that way, but it would be nice if we just could, unpack our suitcases. If we're going to be long-term away, then that would be nice.
And just tell us about where you're staying right now.
So we had a bit of a journey to get to Pilot Mound, and as of yesterday, now we've relocated to Rock Lake, to a seasonal campground that my friends from Pilot Mound have. So they've been very kind and generous to allow my husband and I to regroup together.
So I guess it was, 1 week ago today that this all started. What's the past week been like for you and your husband and your family?
It's been like a mix of emotions, because I was in Saskatoon on my way home from BC when the fires started to grow, when I heard about the fire that was at the Creighton dump. And of course, for myself, knowing where the Creighton dump was, I really didn't have that much of a concern about where it was going to go, the tailings ponds in the middle and so on and so forth. And in conversation with husband and stuff, I really thought I was going to be home on the 30th of May. And then all of a sudden it was just changing rapidly. And so I was crying because I was getting a lot of misinformation about my home, being maybe gone like within that first day of June. I was like, so I was happy to hear that, things were being mobilized and people were getting up there and stuff. And then my family heard that the fire is going to spread, and so then they were at the cottage and then they had to move. So that was a concern, because now we're going to lose 2 more properties.
Again, your home in Flin Flon would be okay as far as right now, because no structures have burned, but you're worried about the 2 cottages at Millwater, that those may have been lost in the fire.
Yeah, because the Millwater is in the middle between the club fire and the wolf fire. And without having any direct information, where my daughter has been kind of watching the maps for us, and we're kind of like, depending on, what they do, a miracle happens. We could end up maybe not being hit if they drive more to the southeast. But for right now, we've resigned ourselves that we're probably have lost our cottages for sure. I haven't really made too much inquiries about, the fate of Millwater, because I know that they're trying really hard to keep the fires out of Creighton and Flin Flon.
And I guess, how are you handling that reality?
Well, that reality for us is that we may never recover from it.
At this point, too, it sounds like, all 4 sides of Flin Flon are surrounded by fire so far. They're holding it back. How are you feeling about how things are going there?
My heart goes out to those firefighters. I mean, they're so tired and they've worked so hard, and my heart goes out to them because I felt the loss of Denair Beach so deeply, and so their losses, trauma through that is, we're feeling all that on the fringe, and we're really trying to figure out how we help and support those people that are in there, fighting this huge fight.
Leslie Beck is an evacuee from Flin Flon in conversation there with the CBC's Josh Crabb. Later this morning, the Premier of Manitoba will join us live for a feature interview for the latest on the fires, the evacuees, and what's needed going forward. Also some questions about longer-term assistance, as it does look like obviously people are going to be out of their homes for at least some time. Next, let's continue talking about the fires, though, because Flin Flon is some 8 hours north of Winnipeg. So why is it so smoky here, you might be wondering? Yes, we know the fires are big and the winds can blow a certain way, but what is it actually that goes on with wildfire smoke that makes it so widespread that it reaches so many communities? And of course, that's not just happening here. That's happening across Canada with the various fires. Well, Brian Weens is going to help us understand this. He has a background in smoke forecasting. He's the program manager at Canada Wildfire, and he joins us live on CBC via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning.
So how far from the flames can actually the smoke reach? What is there a geographical distance that we understand about it?
There are incredibly long distances, particularly if you can send the smoke deep or high into the atmosphere. It will get caught by the winds that are aloft, which are much stronger, and they can carry it thousands and thousands of kilometers. In fact, last week, we had reports of people observing on satellites there was actually smoke over northern Europe. So that's, 10,000 kilometers is not an unusual distance in that situation. The smoke that affects us tends to be lower to the ground, and if you have a lot of smoke coming out, even if a lot is going up, quite a bit is still traveling near the ground level, and it's going to come and affect communities nearby, which is, again, as you're seeing, hundreds of kilometers is not an unusual distance.
What's happening in the actual atmosphere to make smoke be able to travel those kind of long distances that you're talking about?
There's a couple different things. Certainly, smoke eventually will disperse. And so if you don't have any precipitation and you have a reasonably what I would call a smooth flow, or a flow that isn't super turbulent, the smoke can have a stay together, basically in a river, if you like, that will actually continue on for quite a long time. And so that becomes an issue. And I mean, the other thing is there's just so much smoke being produced right now that it's kind of almost an overwhelming feed that's coming into the atmosphere.
What do you mean by it can act as a river? Like, does it become, somebody said to me, it becomes its own sort of weather system, if you will. Does it propel itself in a certain trajectory then?
The smoke, not so much. Certainly around a fire, where that smoke goes and how that happens, the fire creates its own weather, very definitely. But once the smoke's into the atmosphere, it will form into, it'll follow the wind. And if the wind tends to be in the same kind of direction, it isn't really turbulent, it's going to stay together. It's basically not going to disperse the plume. If you have a really strong low pressure center, for example, it'll actually wrap around that, and then it'll actually start to disperse much more quickly. But when the atmosphere is sort of in a smooth flow, which is what we've seen over the good part of Canada over the last week or 10 days, it stays cohesive almost.
How does regional geography play a role? We're here in the prairies, of course, so I'm really curious how that looks different, because we're not BC by any stretch geographically.
Yeah, and in BC, certainly everybody's quite familiar with seeing, the smoke-filled valleys and that kind of thing. But even relatively small valleys, particularly overnight, will fill in with smoke just because the air tends to pool there. And the other thing is that smoke at night, all things being equal, tends to be not lofted high up into the atmosphere. And so then it's staying closer to the ground to begin with. But when you get flow over top of a change in topography, it can actually stir the atmosphere vertically. And so even if there was smoke that wasn't reaching the ground, that can be enough to actually bring it down to the ground. And in certain cases, the topography doesn't have to be huge. It can be quite a profound effect on a relatively modest change in height.
What are some factors that meteorologists consider when they're forecasting and getting ready to put out an air quality statement?
There's sort of three things probably that they would consider. First of all, they're very, very interested in how much smoke is coming out. Where is it coming out? How high is it going into the atmosphere? What's the behavior of the fire? Is it going to be burning? We've had a number of fires that have been burning much longer in the day than was sort of historically normal. And then the thing that they do then is say, what's the actual flow? Is it actually going to be trapped in a flow that's going to carry it southeast? Are we going to see the fires from north of Prince Albert coming to Winnipeg, or are they going to actually go further west and sort of head straight across over to, say, Flin Flon? And so that's the next thing. And the other piece that's really important in Canada and has become an incredibly valuable valuable tool is that there's been a number of computer models that actually forecast the distribution of the smoke. They're not perfect, but they're another very important piece of guidance. The forecaster takes those three pieces and puts them together, combined with their experience, and says, these are what sort of the evidence is. This is what's happened upstream. This is what happened at the town 200, 300 kilometers upstream. What's going to look like for our community? And then they generate a forecast based on that.
I know that in Manitoba, some of us are getting caught off guard, right? All of a sudden you'll go, I can taste something in my mouth, or my eyes were watering this week, or, besides some of the more serious effects of folks that are in those direct areas, right, with the breathing issues and such. Yeah. I wonder what you would say to people. I know there's some resources online that will help people stay ahead of possible air quality getting worse, right?
Yes, definitely. So the standard Environment Canada forecast of air quality, and of course the advisories that are scattered across a good part of the prairies right now, those are a really good indicator. But as you mentioned, smoke can actually sort of drift fairly close to the ground, and then all of a sudden it'll come down on the surface, or it can be fairly close to a city north-south or something like that, and move over relatively quickly. So it can change rapidly. And so people have to become aware, and so that's part of the tool of the forecasts, but then they have to think about what they can do for themselves. And the health people tell us one of the best things they can do is try and avoid exposure. So one of the ways to do that is to move indoors to an area that's got well-filtered air, and that will reduce that sort of thing. The second thing that you can do in your own house, I guess, is you can get a PMP 2.5 filter, something that actually filters the product, the air quality product out of the air and sort of reduces your exposure. And then the third thing is, if you have to be in a smoky area, wearing a KN95 or an N95 mask, a really tight-fitting mask, is very effective at reducing how much of that particulate matter you inhale.
Thanks for being with us this morning, Brian. We really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
That is Brian Wiens with us, background in smoke forecasting, program manager at Canada Wildfire. And just in case you're looking for resources and maps available online to help you sort of get ahead of smoke and air quality challenges, there's one called Firework, there's one called Fire Smoke, and that will look and try to forecast where the wildfires will be and where they will be moving. Staying with fire for a moment, in the next hour of Information Radio, we're going to have an interview about the fact that Manitoba has had 111 wildfires so far this year, and 100 of them were caused by human activity. That's according to the latest data from the province's fire report. So what is behind humans igniting wildfires? We're going to have that interview with an expert in the next hour of the show. Right now, it is time to turn to Heather Wells for other news headlines and what's developing this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the Manitoba Nurses Union is speaking out against a provincial order to relax some labor mobility rules for nurses. Health Minister Uzoma Eseguera ordered the College of Registered Nurses to drop a rule that nursing applicants from other provinces first prove they have worked in Canada. When it did so almost 3 years ago, 2 patients died and there were 35 complaints of gross nursing incompetence. We're going to hear from the Manitoba Nurses Union coming up. And the future of an affordable housing project in Transcona is in question. The Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation applied for $25 million from the Federal Affordable Housing Fund. Well, last week, the executive director learned that fund was out of money. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, speaking of poor air quality and smoky conditions, Winnipeg is under an air quality warning today. North, south, east, and west. I mean, I have pages and pages of communities here, so you're going to want to check before you go out and consider masking. Widespread smoke today in our actual forecast for the day, and a high of 23 degrees. Right now, it is smoky and 8 degrees in Winnipeg. Coming up in the next hour of Information Radio, pedestrians are being encouraged to scramble across a busy Exchange District intersection. This is a pilot project to see if this kind of crossing works in Winnipeg. We're going to hear a little bit more about it. In addition, if you're a new mom and you're feeling more than just a baby blues, how do you get help without being called a quote-unquote bad mom? We're going to have that conversation. It's a follow-up to a feature interview we had last week with a young woman who has put this, a young mom rather, who's put this out front, saying we need better resources in Manitoba. Plus that interview about human activity that causes wildfires, why it happens and what some of the solutions might be. Stay with us. You're with CBC.
Today on The Current.
You should be hired and promoted based on skill and competence, not race or gender.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are being rolled back in the United States, and people who work in that field in this country are seeing changes as well, but they're trying to make the case for why these goals are still good for business. What's coming up on The Current?
The Current with Matt Galloway this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The family of Canadian-Israeli hostage Judy Weinstein-Haggie and her husband Gadi are a step closer to closure. Their bodies were recovered this morning. Their deaths were confirmed by their kibbutz more than a year ago. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says it was the result of a special operation conducted in Gaza last night. The CBC's Crystal Gomansing has more from Jerusalem.
The recovery and return of the remains of Gad Haggie and Judy Weinstein-Haggie breaking across Israel. Members of their kibbutz near Oz, near the border with Gaza, shared a heartfelt statement, remembering Judy as a poet, a creative spirit, and a woman deeply committed to peace and coexistence. Gad, a gifted musician committed to the land. The couple was killed on their kibbutz. They were taking a walk the morning Hamas and its affiliates stormed the border on October 7th in a murderous rampage. She called for help after her husband was shot. Their remains recovered after more than 600 days in Gaza during a special military operation, according to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He said, "We will not rest, nor will we be silent until we return home all of our hostages, the living and the deceased." Judy grew up in Toronto. She went to Israel as a kibbutz volunteer, where she met her husband. The Hostages Family Forum says her relatives have asked for privacy, writing in a statement, "Their return is painful and heartbreaking, but brings healing to our uncertainty." Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, Jerusalem.
The Trump administration's latest efforts to limit travel to the U.S. is being called discriminatory. U.S. President Donald Trump signed a sweeping order banning travel from 12 countries. It also restricts travel from several others. Steve Futterman has details.
Trump announced the travel ban last night, at one point using very blunt language.
We don't want them.
The ban, which will bar travel into the U.S., affects citizens from 12 countries, primarily in Africa and the Middle East, including Afghanistan, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. Trump's explanation is similar to the one he used in 2017 during his first term to announce similar bans in travel.
Very simply, we cannot have open migration from any country where we cannot safely and reliably vet and screen those who seek to enter the United States.
Trump referred to an attack this weekend in Colorado, where an Egyptian man who entered the U.S. legally but then didn't return when his work permit expired attacked a group of people who were calling for the release of hostages held in Gaza.
In the 21st century, we've seen one terror attack after another carried out by foreign visa overstayers.
7 other countries will have travel restrictions but not total bans, including Cuba, Laos, and Venezuela. Trump's order does allow some exceptions, including those who already have green cards and athletes and coaches who will be taking part in next year's World Cup soccer tournament and the 2028 Olympics here in L.A. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
Tributes are pouring in for the first Canadian in space. Former astronaut and Liberal cabinet minister Marc Garneau is dead. His family issued a statement last night. Kate McKenna has more.
He really had a devotion to, not that we didn't have a devotion to Canada, but his was different.
Canadian astronaut Roberta Bonder says for her former colleague Marc Garneau, it was always about Canada.
For Marc, it was really not just him showing Canadians that we had a place and a role in Canada in the space program, but it was also really to show the Americans that we had not just the talent of a Canadarm, but we had people who could back it up.
As Canada's first astronaut to go to space, Garneau is being remembered as a trailblazer with a passion for space and public service.
Look, the man was a giant.
He left a mark on his former colleague, Liberal MP James Maloney. From 2008 until 2023, Garneau was an MP for a Montreal area riding, serving in Justin Trudeau's cabinet as Minister of Transport and Foreign Affairs.
The thing I'll remember about him here is he was a gentleman. I mean, this is a place where people, politics gets in the way of a lot of things, and people behave in ways that is unacceptable in any other place. But Marc Garneau never did that.
That message echoed by Conservatives, including MP Gérard Deltel.
As a cabinet minister, when I raised some issue with them, I always want to reach out, what will be the best solution to this issue?
Others paying tribute on social media include astronaut Chris Hadfield, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and Governor General Mary Simon, a testament to a life that Garneau himself described as a most extraordinary ride. He was 76 years old. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
Canadian Steel Company executives and union officials are in Ottawa today. They're looking to convince the federal government to respond to U.S. President Donald Trump's latest tariff hike. They want Ottawa to implement matching tariffs in retaliation to the Trump administration's move this week. Prime Minister Marc Carney is insisting his government will take time to craft a response, and it will continue talks with the Trump White House. To those wildfires in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, more than 30,000 people are on the move. Officials are starting to get a sense now of the scale of the damage, with the fires simply not letting up in some areas. Cameron McIntosh is in Prince Albert.
Pumping water for the firefight at the village of Denair Beach. Crews saw winds from Saskatchewan's Wildfire kick the lake up.
Creates its own wind. It's just insane.
Doorbell footage shows black smoke engulfing buildings as the fire blew in.
I can't even comprehend it.
Staying at a hotel in Prince Albert, Patsy Janae knows her brother's home is gone. She's not certain about hers, not far away.
I pray that I'll go home to a home.
A community of 700, full damage is yet to be assessed, but provincial officials are already saying
largest single area of value impact is in the Denair Beach area.
Fires also surround nearby Creighton and Flin Flon, Manitoba. Evacuated for a week now, the firefight, a physical and logistical battle. Flin Flon's mayor says they're having trouble getting food to firefighters.
They're within a couple of days of not being able to have enough food to provide to all these men.
Across Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, about 35,000 people in total are out of their homes, with hundreds of firefighters trying to contain what they can. In La Ronge, Saskatchewan, helicopters bombed the downtown with water. 2 businesses were lost, but the flames were pushed back. A victory for now, says Mayor Joe Hordaisky.
We still not out of the woods.
These fires still out of control and spreading, with little relief from the weather in sight. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Prince Albert.
There's a new push to improve fire safety in First Nations communities across the country, particularly when it comes to smoke alarms. It's part of a plan by the National Indigenous Fire Safety Council. Kwabena Adoro has the story.
I'm glad. I'll feel a lot better, a lot safer.
Laura McCumber now has a brand new smoke detector in her home in Garneau, south of Montreal. Manufacturer Kidé is donating thousands of the alarms to First Nations communities across the country. Firefighter Brandon Chubby is helping install them here.
I am noticing a bit of a lack of smoke detectors in homes. I guess mostly because protocols, rules have changed, the laws have changed, and certain things are now up to code and it requires more alarms, and I just don't think people are aware of that.
Most of the firefighting team here is made up of volunteers in the community of about 8,000 people. They say they respond to about 100 fire calls a year. According to the National Indigenous Fire Safety Council, Indigenous peoples make up 5% of the population in Canada, but 20% of deaths related to residential fires. Arnold Lazar is with the council.
We know that where the people are dying is in rural, underserved communities, living in housing that meets no standards without working smoke alarms.
Garneau Fire Brigade Chief Wheezy Stacy says a lot of the calls they respond to are to their own families.
It makes my job very difficult at times because as a fire inspector as well, I spend a lot of my time trying to educate people on why being prepared is important.
The members of the fire brigade say they hope that these smoke detectors will help them keep people safe by getting them out in time and helping speed up their response, not just here in Garneau, but across all First Nations. Kubino Duro, CBC News, Garneau.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, cbcnews.ca. And if you like the World Report podcast, please follow us and tell a friend. It helps spread the word. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here. Another day of emergency in Manitoba and very troublesome smoke in the air today. Lots of air quality issues. Thanks for joining us on the show. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. Well, in a moment, we're going to connect with an evacuee from Snow Lake who is going to join us here. She has been making her way south, so we'll find out where she is this morning. She's been doing some camping along the way. She's also extremely worried. You just heard on national news about what's happening in Denair Beach and what's already happened there. And she does have family friends there. So stay tuned and we'll talk to her about the experience of being an evacuee. Also this hour on the program, a follow to a story we had just 1 week ago with a young mother who says there needs to be better resources in this province for moms like her. If you're feeling more than the baby blues, how do you get help without fear of being called a bad mom or even fearing having your kids being taken away? We're going to have that conversation. So we're going to look into the resources and we're going to revisit some of what we heard from this young woman last week. So stay tuned. Right now, it is 11 minutes after 7 o'clock. Heather Wells joins us with a news update.
Good morning. Well, a newly appointed federal cabinet minister harassed one of her employees when she worked at RRC Polytech in Winnipeg. That's according to an external investigation. Documents provided to CBC News show Rebecca Chartrand was investigated in 2019 when she directed Indigenous strategy at Red River College. As thousands of wildfire evacuees are now staying in Winnipeg, a crucial task is making sure everyone gets fed. Now, a group of local chefs working together with the Canadian Red Cross to cook 1,250 meals a day. We're going to hear from the owner of Prairie Kitchen Catering coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Thanks very much, Heather. It is 12 minutes now after 7 o'clock, and let's get into what's happening with the smoke and then with the forecast. Abby?
The skies are smoky and hazy from the south where we are, tracking it all the way up north. We're going to see light breezy winds and that will be blowing through, but the smoke from the wildfire will be hanging in the air, making visibility poor in a lot of areas. Hence, this special air quality warning in place for much of southern Manitoba. Smoke is going to be thick across the Red River Valley, likely sticking around until tomorrow morning. Similar conditions we're going to see in western Manitoba. Things will start to clear by later today, while in the eastern part of the province, we may not see a relief until like midday on Friday. But up north, that smoke is still quite heavy, especially around Flin-Flon and surrounding areas. So if you're having breathing issues or health concerns, it's advised you stay inside as much as possible today. In Winnipeg, 9 degrees and smoky. Air quality is going to be poor today. It's going to stay hazy, but it will be warm. We'll see a high of 23 degrees with light winds from the north. Across the south, it's going to be similar conditions. We're seeing temperatures between 3 and 9 degrees, and highs will be around 23 degrees. But up north, it's kind of cooler and cloudy with temperatures between 3 and 0 degrees.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Feels like last week exactly when we were hoping for rain and it wasn't coming for a couple of days. That's a situation we're in now. As you heard Abby say, there's nothing in the forecast. It's around Saturday, Sunday, we should start to see some showers, and hopefully that will be soaking, and hopefully it'll extend to the north as well. All right, let's get into the morning commute. Sierra Sanders is in to update us on that. Hi.
Good morning. Again, still pretty quiet on the commuter line, so I'm assuming things are moving pretty smoothly out there. And as I've been reminding folks throughout the week, wildfires in eastern and northern Manitoba can affect highways and travel. And make sure to check Manitoba 511 before you head out to check to see if there's any closures or incidents on provincial roads. If you're seeing anything out there that's slowing you down, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That's 204-788-3093.
Well, speaking of traveling and being on the road, my next guest has been on the move since the community where she lives has been put on a voluntary evacuation notice. People were given 48 hours in Snow Lake to consider evacuating. And so Jamie Flutie left. She's lived there for 3 years. She has been, we understand, camping to try and make her way down here south to more safety. And we've reached her this morning, and we're grateful she's given us some time on CBC. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning.
So where are you right now then?
We're currently in Dauphin right now.
Okay. And how did you make your way there? As I mentioned, did you end up camping along the way, or did you drive straight through?
No, we camped on our way. We stopped at Steep Rock, which was beautiful. And they were very, very nice to us there. And then we're just slowly making our way. We have a really old camper, so...
You have lived in Snow Lake for the past 3 years, as I mentioned. When did you actually leave? Because your mayor up there, we talked to yesterday on the show, and he just put out the 48-hour voluntary evacuation. So when did you actually decide to leave?
So we actually decided to leave the morning of. So we got prepared and left, and by the time we hit the road, they had put out the voluntary evacuation. Because most of my family is from Flin-Flon, Creighton, Denair Beach, so kind of knew how things were going and wanted to kind of get ahead of it.
So you left yesterday morning?
The morning before that.
The day before.
So it's almost been 48 hours now.
What's this been like for you? Especially, I'm really sorry. We're all seeing the images out of Denair Beach starting to come through, and lots of loss there. What's it been like for you?
I think for me, I'm just really grateful that I had the time to pack up my stuff. I had a lot of time to pack up my stuff, whereas my family in Denair Beach, I have quite a few family members there, even one that I know for sure that her house was completely down to the ground, and lots of the residents there, they weren't really expecting a fire to come all the way around and up and actually come to their community, so they didn't really pack the essentials that they would have if they had known that they were really threatened. At the time, it was just that the highway was going to be threatened from a totally different fire, and now there's 3 massive fires that came together and are completely surrounding my hometown, which is Flin-Flon and Creighton. And yeah, so it's been a bit of a shock, and I just kind of want to get down to where my family is so I can support them.
Yeah, I understand. So you have lots of ties up there. Lived in Snow Lake the last 3 years. You said you're originally from Flin-Flon. You got family in Denair Beach. Just so Manitobans know, right? This Denair Beach is in Saskatchewan, but this is also close together, right?
Yeah.
What's it like for people to get information? I mean, you mentioned you have family members that have lost homes. Are they seeing images through media or on socials, or how are you planning on staying up to date on information as an evacuee?
I think it's just that we are such a tight-knit community, and we are a tri-community. Like, they call us the water in the wild, and it's Flin-Flon, Creighton, Denair Beach. They're all together, and I believe they're getting a lot of images just from the voluntary firefighters that are there. I used to be on the fire department in Flin-Flon, so I have a lot of really close connections to all of the firefighters that are on the ground, and they've been working tirelessly day and night, and I know firsthand just how grueling the work is, but they've been taking some pictures and I think in videos just to give some people some peace of mind and to know what's going on. But yeah, it's hard to see the pictures, and they just keep rolling in, and more people that I know who have lost their homes and lost absolutely everything.
I know you can't betray confidences, and I'm not asking you to, but given that you're, in contact with some of those firefighters and you know what you're looking at when they're sending images and video, what are they facing? How are things going?
I haven't been able to update myself the last couple of days just because I've been pulling a trailer just with my toddler and my dog. But I'm hoping with these cooler weathers and everything that I know that they've been able to hold the line at Creighton, and that the wind, I'm hoping, has died down quite a bit. And I'm just really, really hoping we're kind of at the beginning of the end of all of this.
We of course will get some official reports in the morning. We have the premier on an hour as well. Just before we move from the firefighters back to your story, how are they holding up? Like, given that you know what it's like to be in those emergent situations, what does it take to have the stamina to do this?
Everything. It takes everything. I think they're really tired for sure. I know that Flin-Flon and the Manitoba side, they've gotten a ton of support from the province and just different departments throughout the province coming down to help. And I know that they were getting some military help, I think, throughout the fires in the north as well. I did hear that the Saskatchewan side struggled a lot more, and I think even just throughout my entire time being in Flin-Flon and living and working in Flin-Flon growing up, we've always struggled with that border town kind of thing. So I'm not too sure exactly the details of that, but it's been a challenge, I think, for the Creighton and Denair Beach side with getting support.
So you've been camping along the way. You're now in Dauphin, I think you said, with a dog. And did you say you have a child with you too?
I have a toddler, yeah.
Oh, how's that been?
It's all right. She keeps saying we're on an adventure, so
good.
Yeah.
What did you make sure that you packed, Jamie? As you said, you had some time to think about this.
Everything. So my husband's still back in Snow Lake working and kind of helping with crews there. But I pretty much packed almost everything that I could. So lots and lots of clothes. My mom said she didn't pack enough clothes when she left, so I just made sure I had like lots of clothes and any kind of important documents and everything. Anything I could kind of think of that I was like, if I'll miss this, I guess. I almost had too much time, I think, and I really feel for people, but I also thought, like, the more I pack, the more I can give to other people, too, just in case.
Manitobans always giving. How are you dealing with the reality that this might, you might be at home for some time?
I don't think it's really hit me yet. I think I'm just feeling more for, like, my aunt and a lot of my other family members who could have potentially also lost their homes, and all my friends who have lost their homes and how displaced they're going to be. So I'm really trying to be optimistic that things will turn around and we'll be fine for Snow Lake. But it's everyone else. I'm very grateful I got the time to leave and that I'm hoping things are turning around now for us. But yeah, I feel for them.
Do you know where you're going to go next, or are you going to stay in Dauphin for some time?
I think I'm just going to try to connect with some of my other family who have lost their homes. And I know, like, my grandpa, he was in the manor in Flin-Flon too, so he's down south closer to Winnipeg and stuff. So we'll probably try to make our way around there and just try to connect with family. I think they've been really on edge just knowing that I've been in the north still. So yeah.
So now you're in the south.
Yeah.
I wonder what it was like when you were leaving. We're hearing stories of, some of our reporters that are going north, and they're talking about how, the sky changes, the smell, as you get closer to the fire zone. What was your drive down south like? Like what did you drive through and smell and see in terms of smoke and fire?
Yeah, the smoke had been really bad the last couple of days before we had left, and to the point where, you couldn't go outside at all. So the further south we got, the better it got. It is a little smoky here still, but it's nowhere near what it was. We could barely see with how much smoke there was in the air at the time. So, yeah, it's nice to get some fresh air and some blue skies poking through here. And I couldn't imagine even further north in Thompson and stuff, too, because there's so many fires literally all over the north right now.
Jamie, what do you want to say to those that are fighting the fires and volunteering? And then do you have any questions for the Premier, for leadership? He's going to be on here in an hour on CBC.
Is he? I think just keep on fighting the fight, where I'm hoping getting to the end. And I know how hard this work is, and we're going to get to the other side, and I'll see you on the other side. When it comes to the Premier, I think it's just connecting with the people who have been displaced. And I think the most important thing is we need to figure out better ways to work with our borders and our other provinces and be able to work together, because at the end of the day, we're all people, and what affects them is affecting us as well. But I have a lot of concerns for the north as well, and all the reserves and stuff that have been affected and evacuated and stuff as well. So It's tough. It's tough because I've been very fortunate, and I'm very grateful that I had the time to leave and that I have places to stay. And a lot of people don't have that. So I'm hoping they're getting the same treatment that I'm getting all along the way down.
Well said. Thank you very much, Jamie. All the best in the rest of your journey, and to your family. We wish them, safety and some peace in this terrible time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Jamie Flutie live on CBC. She's from Snow Lake. She's lived there for the past 3 years, but was born in Flin Flon. She actually was a firefighter in Flin Flon for some time. She was sharing. She has family in Denair Beach that have lost their homes across the Saskatchewan border there, and also family in Creighton. People displaced all over. As she mentioned, her grandfather's in a different place, just now south and safe. He was evacuated from one of the healthcare facilities up north, and she is in Dauphin right now. She's been camping down along the way as she made her way with her dog and her toddler in her RV.
It's an honor to have you at the White House.
The stories that matter.
The opportunity is in the partnership.
As they happen.
There are some places that are never for sale.
And what they mean to you.
But never say never. Never say never.
For news you can trust, stay with CBC News.
7:25 a.m. the time right now. Smoky and 8 degrees in Winnipeg. Well, as I mentioned, I woke up and I didn't make it to watch the game in overtime, so I started Googling what happened in the Stanley Cup playoffs Game 1. Scott Reguer is here to tell us the good Canadian news, that is, if you're cheering for the Oilers.
Yeah, absolutely, Marcy. They have taken a big step in their quest for redemption, although they did not make it easy on themselves last night. After falling behind 3-1 to Florida in the opening game of the finals, they clawed their way back with Leon Draisaitl netting the winner in overtime. So Edmonton draws first blood, a refreshing change from last year's final when, of course, they lost the first 3 games to the Panthers. After setting up Draisaitl's winner on one of his silky smooth passes, Connor McDavid shared his thoughts.
Florida has closed out games extremely well. Obviously, we put ourselves in a tough spot, and we just hung in there. And I think that that is experience, as you said. Just knowing that you don't got to open it up. We don't need to. We got to hold them at 3 and find a way to get one. And unfortunately, we did.
The winning goal was Draisaitl's record-tying 3rd in overtime in these playoffs alone. In last year's Cup Finals, remember, the German star was a shell of himself because of injuries. So another big difference in this Edmonton squad as it tries to end Canada's more than 3-decade-long Cup drought. Game 2 goes tomorrow, and a PWHL note, the expansion teams, Marcy and Vancouver and Seattle, have made their first signings. Seattle has inked the league's co-leader in scoring and an MVP candidate, Hillary Knight, while Vancouver is reportedly very close to adding forward Sarah Nurse, which obviously would be a massive coup for that expansion team.
Let's go to basketball. The NBA Finals start tonight, actually, and they're going to have a very Canadian feel, too.
They sure will. 4 players from Canada with 2 each on Oklahoma City and Indiana. So that ties the record for most Canadians in a final set last year, although those Canadians were mostly players at the end of the bench. Not so this time around. Benedict Mathurin and Andrew Nembhard provided vital contributions to the Pacers' playoff run. And then you have Thunder stars Lou Dort and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The latter, of course, just named the league MVP, while the former was named to the NBA's all-defensive first team. Dort, who is from Montreal, had this to say.
Obviously, we represent our teams here, but at the end of the day, we represent our country as well. So it's big. It's just showing that Canada basketball keeps growing. I mean, I feel like there's been a Canadian player in the finals for the last, I don't know how many years. And then it just shows how, there's a lot of talent there. I'm happy that there's a lot of Canadian on the stage right now.
Dort and the Thunder, Marcy, got some extra defensive help yesterday from the weather. The Pacers were delayed arriving in Oklahoma City by a series of tornadoes, which left them about 4 hours behind schedule. Tonight's opening game still on schedule. It'll tip off at 7 Central Time.
And beyond basketball and hockey, what else is standing out in sports?
Beginning of the CFL season tonight.
Oh, yeah.
In Regina,
my gosh.
Right? There's so much going on. By the way, the Riders will be hosting the Ottawa Red Blacks as ever. The coverage will be on TSN, which will not have Milt Stegall as part of the broadcast team this season. Of course, I'm sure many of our listeners have heard that Milt lost his son Chase at just 20 years of age. He died unexpectedly at DePaul University Monday He was a member of that school's soccer team, but our thoughts very much with Milt Stegall and his family. TSN is going to have a rotation of active CFL players come in and try to, well, not replicate what Milt does, but come in and provide their own unique coverage. So CFL season begins tonight. I mentioned all of the things going on, though, Marcy. Canadian Open of golf gets underway today, already is underway, just outside of Toronto. And then we have the French Open singles finals in the women's draw, where we have Louise Boisson, 361st ranked in the world, and French hopes reside with her as she plays Coco Gauff, the world number 2, in about an hour and a half.
All right, and really nice tributes here locally coming in for Milt Stegall in the loss, because a lot of Winnipeggers, right, would have known his little boy from when he was little, because Milt played here. He was growing up in the field, little pictures, and it's pretty heartbreaking. All right, thanks a lot.
TSN's going to dedicate this entire football season to his son Chase.
Oh, really nice. All right, thank you very much, Scott, for the update. Appreciate it. That is Scott Regehr live on CBC with sports. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is 9 degrees. We've got widespread smoke all day. Winnipeg is under an air quality warning with smoke wafting down from those fires in the north. 23 is the high in Winnipeg this afternoon. Newly appointed federal cabinet minister Rebecca Chartrand harassed one of her employees when she worked at RRC Polytech in Winnipeg. That is according to an external investigation commissioned by the college and conducted by a Winnipeg law firm. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
Rebecca Chartrand was elected in April as a new MP for the Northern Manitoba riding of Churchill, Keewaydin-Nagasaki. In May, Prime Minister Marc Carney appointed Chartrand to cabinet. According to documentation provided to CBC News, Chartrand was investigated in 2019 when she was the director of Indigenous strategy at Red River College. In December of that year, the investigation concluded Chartrand's conduct amounted to personal harassment of one of her employees. Chartrand resigned from the college the same month. The former employee, who CBC is not identifying, said she tried to make her experience known to Liberal Party officials.
I did not want what happened to me happen to anybody in Ottawa.
In a statement, a spokesperson for Chartrand said the minister is committed to fostering a healthy work environment for everyone in the workplace. A spokesperson for RRC Polytech said the college does not discuss personnel matters. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Manitoba Nurses Union is speaking out against a provincial order to relax some labour mobility rules for nurses. Health Minister Uzoma Eseguera ordered the College of Registered Nurses to drop a rule that nursing applicants from other provinces first prove they have worked in Canada. When it did so almost 3 years ago, 2 patients died, and there were 35 complaints of gross nursing incompetence. The college later reinstated the rule. MNU President Darlene Jackson says that rule improves patient safety.
Ensuring someone else has worked in another venue in Canada, has worked those hours, gives me more comfort knowing that they have skills for a Canadian system.
Eseguera says the government takes complaints seriously. The minister says Manitoba needs more nurses and outside applicants should get more training instead of being denied a nursing license. Plans for an affordable housing project in Transcona are on hold. A national funding program has run out of money, leaving the Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation unsure how to move forward. Executive Director James Heinrich says the project was counting on $25 million from the Federal Affordable Housing Fund. He says the nonprofit has already spent hundreds of thousands of its own money.
We're always looking at developing housing that is deeply affordable for the people that have probably some of the lowest incomes in the province, and we want to help house them. That's what we want to do. Losing that amount of money, if we do that, would hamper us on developing other projects as well. Just it ties our hands.
A spokesperson for the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says it is working to process as many of the program's applications as possible. Well, following a special operation carried out in southern Gaza, the Israeli military has recovered the bodies of Canadian Judy Weinstein-Hagee and her husband Gadi.
של גדי וג'ודי
And it's the breaking news this morning on Israeli radio. The couple was among victims of the Hamas attacks on October 7th. Their remains were recovered just outside Han Yunis. Judy Weinstein-Hagee was born in New York but grew up in Toronto, and most recently had been teaching English to children with special needs at a kibbutz near the Gaza border. Well, tributes are pouring in for Marc Garneau. Canada's first astronaut has died. He was 76 years old. Garneau made history when he flew on the Space Shuttle Challenger in 1984. Roberta Bondar was the first Canadian woman in space.
For Marc, it was not just him showing Canadians that we had a place and a role in Canada in the space program, but it was also really to show the Americans that we had not just the talent of a Canadarm, but we had people who could back it up. That was really an important step for Marc and for all of us to be able to see that.
Garneau later entered politics as a Liberal MP and cabinet minister. Prime Minister Mark Carney says, may we all remember him for the national pride and possibility he represented to us all. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Well, as thousands of wildfire evacuees are now staying in Winnipeg, a crucial task is making sure everyone gets fed. A group of local chefs are working together with the Canadian Red Cross to cook 1,250 meals a day. Matthew Neufeld owns Prairie Kitchen Catering. He says when he got the call to make meals for wildfire evacuees, he jumped at the chance.
These people lost their homes, lost their whole communities, and this is the least that we can do. So we want to make sure that we can connect people with food, because food is love, food is nourishment. So we're just trying to give a little bit of that to the people in need right now.
Neufeld says they are serving all kinds of meals, everything from vegetarian chilies to salads and pasta bakes. The global organization World Central Kitchen is also partnering with local groups to feed wildfire evacuees. And you can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Abby has a forecast.
Smoke stretching from most parts of the province from the south all the way up north. We're going to see light breeze. Winnipeg, 9 degrees at this time. Hazy skies warming up to 23. Similar conditions we're seeing in Brandon, Duff, and Gimli, all the way down to the Parkland region. We're going to see highs getting to 23. While up north, temperatures range from 8 to 19 degrees today. But smoky skies and hazy conditions across the province. Currently, Winnipeg, 9 degrees.
All right. Thanks very much, Abby. In the morning commute this morning, things are moving pretty good so far. We haven't had any major calls of any incidents. Please check 511 on the highways before you head out, especially in smoky areas, of course, and lots of changes to highway travel because of the air quality, because of the fires. But call us if you need to. Sierra is handling traffic today. It's at 788-3093. Well, next on CBC's Information Radio, we're going to continue a conversation that we actually started having last week with a new mom who's lived through postpartum mental illness. Lexi Hawika began experiencing anxiety, obsessive thoughts, and panic attacks soon after the birth of her second child. She says she at first didn't know quite what was going on, but she knew it wasn't depression. Now, here's a bit of a clip from our conversation last week. She describes her experience.
I started just worrying about him a lot, and then it turned into worrying about my own health. And then from there, it turned into panic attacks, which I had never experienced before. And they're frightening. It would literally feel like I was having a stroke. Sometimes my arms would go numb. Sometimes my heart would beat out of my chest. Can't breathe. So I knew it was some kind of mental illness, but I knew it wasn't depression.
What were you most afraid of when you were feeling that way? And then you're also, you have 2 kids.
Losing control and my kids seeing it too. When I reached out for help, it was regarding my intrusive thoughts. I was frightened. I was scared. And I was looking for some kind of validation or reassurance from my therapist at the time. And when I did tell her, that's when she threatened to call Child Family Services on me, CFS.
Lexi, a week on our show last week, she eventually did get the help that she needed. She's now advocating, though, for a treatment program for mothers experiencing postpartum mental illness without the risk of being separated from their kids. Joining me to talk more about this and the resources in Manitoba is Marian Goldstone, who works with the Mood Disorders Association of Manitoba and also has lived experience with postpartum illness. I'm glad you're with us, Marian. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And thank you to Lexi for being so brave and courageous to step forward with this very, very necessary conversation.
What can you share about your own postpartum anxiety and obsessive thoughts?
Well, I think I was very much like Lexi. I knew about depression, postpartum depression, baby blues. It's a fairly common thing that gets talked about to women that are expecting children, and we do hear stories about it. But mine, like Lexi's, took much more of the anxiety, obsessive, compulsive disorder. And I developed a ritual every night that I couldn't put my kids to bed until I sat with them for a period of time and thought about certain things and made sure everything was right. No one knew about it but me. And I was terrified for the longest time that they would be somehow taken from me if I went to a shopping mall, if I went on a holiday, and didn't talk about it, knew it wasn't right, but didn't really want to mention it to anybody because I was very much afraid of what they would think. And I had never connected it until just recently, that was probably postpartum mental illness.
Yeah. So what is the difference, for example, just because, a lot of people might, we use the term postpartum depression, as you said, and there's an awareness there. So how do you describe sort of some of the distinct differences?
Well, usually with depression, it's our thoughts. It's in our head. and it affects our thinking in a very negative way. We will often think, we call them cognitive thought distortions. One common one is, I should have, or we say things to ourselves that we would never say to someone we love. We really put ourselves down and we start believing those thoughts are true. And when we are in a depressed state, our thoughts are not always our facts. So depression is often about thoughts. Anxiety is always based in our body. Anxiety always comes with a feeling. So we're going to feel our heart pounding out of our body, like Lexi was saying. We may have our hands chill. We may sweat. We may have a stomach reaction. We've got a huge gut-brain connection going on, and we're really going to feel that connection along with the racing thoughts. But there's always a feeling with anxiety, whereas with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, we have a compulsive behavior, but we also have this obsessive thought that will be there. Yeah.
And it could be that repetitive routine, as you said, that you must go through because your mind is telling you that connects to something that's going to happen.
Yeah. Keeping your kids safe, right.
Lexi talked about, reaching out for help. And then at one point on her journey, she did get some good help. But before that, on one point of her journey, she was threatened with child welfare officials. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I've sat on both sides of that desk sort of thing. I've been the person receiving help, and I've also at different times been the person offering help and support. And so it's a tricky question because I hear Lexi's and appreciate that panic of, oh my goodness, you're going to take my children away. And I don't know what got lost in that communication problem. I wasn't in the room to know where that came from. I know that Lexi did acknowledge that when she talked about intrusive thoughts and that's her story and her private journey. We don't know exactly what that was, and that the counselor would have a duty to keep both baby children at home and Lexi safe. And she did allude to that. And I wonder if somehow there was a communication issue
or something triggered that response.
Because I think what the therapist was trying to do was ensure that everyone was safe. And she did offer Lexi the opportunity to get support from her family. And apparently that took place, and then there was no need to reach further. Had Lexi been without any support, there would have, depending on what was said and depending on the level of care needed, the therapist would be bound legally by duty of care to make a report, to keep everyone safe. That doesn't necessarily translate into taking one's children away for life or things like that. But I wondered about that, and not being a fly on the wall, I can see issues on both sides.
Sure, but of course, in that moment, the impact of it and the effect of it can be, devastating, and that you could go underground, forget I'm not getting help anymore. I don't want to risk losing my kids.
Absolutely.
So there's something, whether it's the communication or the systems or the understanding of what postpartum mental illness is, as you're explaining the complications, then we're gonna risk losing a lot here. How common is all of this, Marian? Like, how common is postpartum mental illness? What stats do we understand?
Well, 23%, I think, and everyone, depending who's counting the stats, you get slightly different numbers. About 23%, I think, of women having children will be affected with some type of reaction, whether it's baby blues or whether it's a full-blown mental health reaction. I think coming out of the pandemic, it's 1 in 3.
That's a big number.
It is a big number. And the thing about postpartum mental health issues that people don't think about is that it's always nuanced. People will say, well, it's just mental health. What's different about it? Well, it is. It is its own special cat, because there's so many factors increasing the level of stress. There's so many changes going on. There's the hormonal changes, all of those things, that it really raises that level of stress. So, for example, OCD is about 2 to 3% in the general population of occurrence. When you start moving into that postpartum period, you're looking at about a 17%.
Wow, that's a big jump.
That's a big jump. So there's something very specific and very concerning going on in that regarding mental health in that postpartum period.
I don't want to rush us at all, but I want to make sure we have proper time here in our remaining time to look at what's available to Manitoba mothers and what you think an ideal treatment program would be that we don't have here.
Well, most of the RHAs, to my knowledge, all of them will have services, but we know we are in a time that they're very, very thin. And especially once we get out to rural and remote and northern areas, they are very thin, and they're not very easily accessed in the city, as Lexi pointed to. Lexi really raised some very interesting things about the program in the UK, and that was started in about 2014, 2015. And she talked about in her how she would have benefited from some of the crisis stabilization units that they had set up specifically for postpartum moms, where they could have their babies with them. Now, that's only part of that model, and that is a wonderful thing. And I know that Lexi felt that would have benefited her terrifically, as it would many moms. But that UK program is one that's often referred to as a model. There is a psychiatrist in Quebec that's really pushing Canada to try and adopt that. And it also puts skilled, trained, specifically designated mental health professionals in every health region in the province into all the regions, so that they're much more accessible and that the training is much deeper. Generally, when you look at what needs to happen, is there's gaps. We have gaps in services, maybe more services in urban areas. We need definitely more in the urban areas, but definitely more rural and northern remote. We certainly need deeper education everywhere, because as Lexi pointed out, there's this whole plethora of other mental health illnesses, postpartum psychosis, PTSD, OCD, anxiety, even postpartum eating disorders are common in that postnatal period.
And we're way behind with education, to your point.
Way behind.
Yeah.
And we need to get this into schools. We need to get it down into the grassroots too, as much as we need to get it in our clinical professionals, because we need to democratize this. The other thing that we could do, I think, the quick fixes would be
just briefly, if I may.
We need to maybe look at the screening scales that we use, because many of them only tap into depression. We need to look at the postnatal screening scales for mental health. The other thing that we can all benefit from, and I want to leave your listeners with this, is a program called Cognitive Behavioral Therapy with mindfulness, which deals with our thinking and helps us sort through some of those negative thoughts. It's free. The University of Manitoba offers it.
Okay.
You can take it online, and you can go, I believe, and take it as a program. But check out University of Manitoba CBT.
Okay.
Mindfulness, and also ask your mental health professionals if you can get into a DBT training program.
I will have to stop you there, but can you give us that website really quick? I apologize. I've got a wildfire interview coming up, but can you give me that website one more time, Marion? The CBT?
C as in cat, B as in box, T as in table, with mindfulness, and just check Google free program in that at University of Manitoba. They manage it, and it's available in most RHAs.
Okay.
It's 5 weeks, and it's free, and it helps everybody with their mental health.
Apologize, I do have to go here. I thank you very much for all the information.
There's so much on this topic. I hope you continue to examine it, and thank you for shedding light on it.
Thank you, Marion Goldstein with the Mood Disorders Association of Manitoba. For more on Lexi Hawika, you can look at our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. She wrote an opinion piece. moodmb.ca is the Mood Disorders website. Also, 988 is emergency texting. They go to a network of partners and communities across the country, and check out Cognitive Behavioral Therapy free through the U of M. Sorry, I think we got that website a little bit mixed up at the end there, but you can check it out. 9 minutes to 8 o'clock. I never like rushing anyone. It's such a deep, important conversation, but we have another one coming up next on CBC, and this one is about wildfires, but it's specifically about the fact that there's been 111 of them in Manitoba so far, 27 still burning this morning, and data says, according to the province, 90% of the wildfires this season were caused by humans. Virginia Iglesias is an environmental data scientist and researcher at the University of Colorado Boulder. She specializes in climate and weather. She's been doing analysis since the wildfires ripped through Los Angeles earlier this year. She says a number of factors from unattended barbecues to sparks and arson make up a long list of human activity responsible for wildfires. And her research has found, we'll let her tell us that. She's with us now via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning.
What are the other factors, first of all, that cause wildfires that are human activity?
Human activity impacts every single aspect of fire. And fire is a very complex phenomenon, but it can be summarized into three components. For a fire to happen, we need fuel, we need that fuel to be dry, and we need ignition. Climate change has been making very extensive areas of the landscape very, very dry. Human activities have been increasing the availability of fuel, for instance, through fire suppression. There's more fuel accumulation in areas that shouldn't be as much fuel. And also we are adding fuel to the landscape. When we think about our homes, we think them as safe buildings where we live. But from a fire perspective, they are also fuel. So we are adding fuel to the landscape. And third, we are adding ignition. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, not at all. I'm wondering why. Why? It's kind of astonishing. 90% caused by humans. When we look at the numbers in Manitoba, why are people responsible for so many fires? Has it always been the case, or have people assumed more responsibility over time, or is it just because the landscape's so dry?
Both. Only recently did we learn that humans had such a big impact on ignition. And if we think about fire, it's been on the landscape for 400 million years, right? That's 200 million before dinosaurs. It's been around and it can exist without us, but it relies on lightning. Now we have people who are living closer to wildlands, bringing their barbecues, having campfires, firework, power lines. That's a critical component of fire ignition. Cars parked on dry grass, machines like chainsaws. So anything that can cause a sparkle can start a fire. And with this, we are extending the fire season. So fires are not restricted to convective storms as they were in the past. As we said, we needed lightning in the past for a fire to start. Now fires can start whenever there are dry conditions and fuel, because we humans are providing ignitions constantly. And
your research that I alluded to has found that the wildfires are not only getting bigger, but more frequent. And whiplash weather, as you call it, is a factor. So we've experienced that here. That's when it's 30 degrees, then all of a sudden it's cold, the week after these crazy forecasts we've had. You have said that when we look at solutions to reduce human-caused fires, that there are a number of things that should be done, and some of it has to do with response plans. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Fires are here to stay, and we need to learn to live with fire. And for that, we need to shift from emergency response to careful data-informed planning. And there are steps that we can take. They're not easy, but it can be done. And they need to happen at multiple levels. So homeowners can help improve and reduce the vulnerability of their homes by managing what we call the defensible space. That's the area around the house. And that mostly involves removing vegetation that could ignite near the home. Second, we can build better. We can use fire-resistant materials for roofs and for decks, which are areas that tend to ignite very easily. Sometimes we imagine that when a house burns, it's because flames are getting to the house. That's not necessarily the case. Most houses actually burn because of embers that travel from the front line and fall on a roof or any flat area like a deck. So if we improve the quality and the fire resistance of those areas, we can help protect our homes. Then evacuation is another key part of fire. We can help by removing vegetation along the roads so that escape is possible in the worst case scenario of a fire trapping communities. And then we need fuel removal that needs to happen at the province or federal level. So we need integrated management of fuel and perhaps also regulations about when we can do activities that could start fires. For instance, on days when the fire potential is very high, perhaps we should not be playing with fireworks. Perhaps we should not be starting a chainsaw.
Yes.
And those are decisions that need to be made.
Thank you very much for being with us, Virginia. Appreciate your time. People can read more about your research online, and we appreciate you being with us today as our Manitoba continues to be under a state of emergency.
Thanks for having me.
That's Virginia Iglesias, environmental data scientist and director of Earth Lab, a research unit at the University of Colorado Boulder. Heather, headlines.
Newly appointed federal cabinet minister Rebecca Chartrand harassed one of her employees when she worked at RRC Polytech in Winnipeg. That is according to an external investigation commissioned by the college and conducted by a Winnipeg law firm. We're going to hear from the person whose complaint prompted the RRC investigation. Our next news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thank you. Still ahead on the program this morning, we have the Premier of Manitoba. So we are going to have him after 8 o'clock. Wap Kinew will be here live today in our monthly interview, just landed today. What is the latest, of course, on the wildfires? Also, what lessons have been learned about what's working and what's not. So stay tuned. Wap Kinew will be live in studio after 8. Smoke in the air quality advisories over much of the province, especially in those fire areas. 8 degrees right now in Winnipeg. We're heading for a high of 23. And your commute's been cooperating this Thursday so far. Thanks for listening, everyone. You're on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. World Report is next.
On Cue with Tom Power. The director, Wes Anderson, is one of those filmmakers where you can see one frame of his movie and know immediately that it's him. Behind all those aesthetic decisions are films about death and anxiety and family dynamics. So Wes Anderson will be here to talk about his films and what's really behind them.
We tend to be doing something that's kind of bigger than we even have the means to do.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are being rolled back in the United States, and people who work in that field in this country are seeing changes as well. But they're trying to make the case for why these goals are still good for business. What's coming up on The Current?
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. New trade numbers from Statistics Canada are giving us a better picture of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs and the effect they're having on our economy. Canada's merchandise exports fell by nearly 11% in April, while imports to this country fell by 3.5%. Vehicles and auto parts to the United States took one of the biggest hits. As a result of these drops, Canada's merchandise trade deficit with the world widened in April from just over $2 billion to just over $7 billion. That is the largest deficit on record. Israeli forces have recovered the bodies of Canadian Judy Weinstein-Hagge and her husband Gadi. It is more than a year after their deaths were confirmed. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a statement. He says it was the result of a special operation conducted in Gaza last night. The CBC's Crystal Gomansing has more from Jerusalem.
The recovery and return of the remains of Gad Hagge and Judy Weinstein-Hagge breaking across Israel. Members of their kibbutz near Oz, near the border with Gaza, shared a heartfelt statement, remembering Judy as a poet, a creative spirit, and a woman deeply committed to peace and coexistence. Gad, a gifted musician committed to the land. The couple was killed on their kibbutz. They were taking a walk the morning Hamas and its affiliates stormed the border on October 7th in a murderous rampage. She called for help after her husband was shot. Their remains recovered after more than 600 days in Gaza during a special military operation, according to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He said, "We will not rest, nor will we be silent until we return home all of our hostages, the living and the deceased." Judy grew up in Toronto. She went to Israel as a kibbutz volunteer, where she met her husband. The Hostages Family Forum says her relatives have asked for privacy, writing in a statement their return is painful and heartbreaking, but brings healing to our uncertainty. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, Jerusalem.
U.S. President Donald Trump is banning entry to the U.S. for people from 12 countries. The travel ban will go into effect Monday. Trump says it is largely on the grounds of national security. Anna Cunningham has the details.
Today, there are millions and millions of these illegals who should not be in our country.
US President Donald Trump and his supporters argue this move is common sense and more targeted than his 2017 travel ban. Citing terrorism, hostile governments, visa overstays, Trump also says he cannot have open migration from countries with poor vetting procedures. Afghanistan, Myanmar, Haiti, Iran are on the list, as are Chad, the Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Libya, Somalia, Sudan and Yemen. Another 7 countries, Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan and Venezuela, face a partial ban with no entry on student, business or tourism visas.
It'll disproportionately impact brown and black migrants and people seeking to come to this country.
Says Robin Barnett, Senior Director for Refugee Advocacy at Human Rights First. She calls this a refugee ban. On Tuesday, the UN said Sudan had reached a devastating milestone of more than 4 million people fleeing the country since the conflict there started in 2023. Sudan is on Trump's full travel ban.
These countries are places that people are fleeing due to conflict and other violence.
There are a few exceptions, including athletes travelling for major sporting events in the US. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
Competition to build Canada's new fleet of submarines is heating up. Formal bidding has not officially started, but there is pressure for Ottawa to offer the multi-billion-dollar contract to NATO allies. As Murray Brewster reports, Canada's options don't stop there.
We have been building ships for the Spanish Navy for the last 400 years.
Pablo Menendez is leading Spanish shipbuilder Navantia's efforts to sell Canada new submarines, specifically the S-80.
We have a contract with the Spanish Navy for 4 submarines, and we are really in negotiations to add 2 more. So we have a production line already that we can continue, and we can deliver. Well, in our proposal, we offer 3 submarines to Canada before 2035.
Other allies are also clamoring for attention. Earlier this spring, CBC News revealed details of South Korea's $24 billion pitch. Now, Germany and Norway, 2 countries which Canada has already signed a strategic defense partnership. They want to sell the latest variant of the Type 212 design. Oliver Burkhardt with Germany's TKMS says there's something to be said for NATO partnerships, an argument that has become central to European pushback against the South Korean bid.
We're offering a real partnership, Navy to Navy, industry to industry, government to government. You're joining a family which is feminine.
Germany and Norway began building submarines together a few years ago, and the first boat will be in the water in 2028. Since Canada has never constructed submarines, it buys offshore. Each of the bidders pledged to establish a maintenance facility to sustain the boats and create Canadian jobs. There is no word on when the formal competition will get underway. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
To the wildfires in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, more than 30,000 people are on the move. Officials are starting to get a sense of the scale of the damage so far, with the fires simply not letting up in some areas. Cameron McIntosh is in Prince Albert.
Pumping water for the firefight at the village of Denair Beach, crews saw winds from Saskatchewan's Wildfire kick the lake up.
3/8 all wind, it's just insane.
Doorbell footage shows black smoke engulfing buildings as the fire blew in.
I can't even comprehend it.
Staying at a hotel in Prince Albert, Patsy Janae knows her brother's home is gone. She's not certain about hers, not far away.
I pray that I'll go home to a home.
A community of 700, full damage is yet to be assessed, but provincial officials are already saying
largest single area of value impact is in the Denair Beach area.
Fires also surround nearby Creighton and Flin Flon, Manitoba. Evacuated for a week now, the firefight, a physical and logistical battle. Flin Flon's mayor says they're having trouble getting food to firefighters.
They're within a couple of days of not being able to have enough food to provide to all these men.
Across Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, about 35,000 people in total are out of their homes, with hundreds of firefighters trying to contain what they can. In La Ronge, Saskatchewan, helicopters bombed the downtown with water. 2 businesses were lost, but the flames were pushed back. A victory for now, says Mayor Joe Hordysky.
We still not out of the woods.
These fires still out of control and spreading with little relief from the weather in sight. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Prince Albert.
There's a new push to improve fire safety in First Nations communities across the country, particularly when it comes to smoke alarms. Kwabina Aduro has the story.
I'm glad I'll feel a lot better, a lot safer.
Laura McCumber now has a brand new smoke detector in her home in Garneau, south of Montreal. Manufacturer Kidé is donating thousands of the alarms to First Nations communities across the country. Firefighter Brandon Chubby is helping install them here.
I am noticing a bit of a lack of smoke detectors in homes. I guess mostly because protocols, rules have changed, the laws have changed, and certain things are now up to code and it requires more alarms, and I just don't think people are aware of that.
Most of the firefighting team here is made up of volunteers in the community of about 8,000 people. They say they respond to about 100 fire calls a year. According to the National Indigenous Fire Safety Council, Indigenous peoples make up 5% of the population in Canada, but 20% of deaths related to residential fires. Arnold Lazar is with the council.
We know that where the people are dying is in rural, underserved communities, living in housing that meets no standards without working smoke alarms.
Ganawage Fire Brigade Chief Wheezy Stacy says a lot of the calls they respond to are to their own families.
It makes my job very difficult at times because as a fire inspector as well, I spend a lot of my time trying to educate people on why being prepared is important.
The members of the fire brigade say they hope that these smoke detectors will help them keep people safe by getting them out in time and helping speed up their response, not just here in Ganawage, but across all First Nations. Kubino Duro, CBC News, Ganawage.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Special good morning to the fire evacuees. I know a lot of you are down south and you're anxiously awaiting information. We're going to get some for you this half hour because we have our monthly interview with Premier Wildcanoe. So what's the latest on the crisis? How are people fundraising and coming together? What does the long term look like? And what lessons have already been learned so far in this crisis about what has been working and where improvements could be made as we're facing an unprecedented time in this province with wildfires. We can tell you this morning that the smoke is an issue in a lot of Manitoba. Certainly in Winnipeg, we had a bit of a reprieve here from the way the wind was blowing this morning. You're going to taste it and you're going to feel it. So take care with that out there. We'll have your full forecast coming up in a moment. First to Heather Wells, who's here with our news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. A woman from Snow Lake says she wasted no time packing up and getting out. That community is on a voluntary evacuation order because of a massive wildfire to the north, moving quickly. She says she feels like she was lucky because she had as much time as she did to get out. We'll hear more about her journey. And the Manitoba Nurses Union is speaking out against a provincial order to relax some labor mobility rules for nurses. Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera ordered the College of Registered Nurses to drop a rule that nursing applicants from other provinces first prove they have worked in Canada. Now, when it did that almost 3 years ago, 2 patients died and there were 35 complaints of gross nursing incompetence. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather. Abby is here now to walk us through the forecast.
Yep, we have smoky skies stretching across much of the province. Light breeze to windy conditions will come with that. But the smoke from the fire is going to be causing poor air quality and low visibility in a lot of areas. Hence, we have this air quality warning in effect for most of the regions, especially in the Flin Flon area where we have people, if you have a smoke sensitivity, you might want to take care and try to stay indoors as much as possible. possible. In Winnipeg right now, 11 degrees. It's smoky outside. We've got hazy skies. The smoke will be hanging around through the day, but we will be warming up to around 23 degrees. Later tonight, we're still going to see more hazy conditions, cooling off to 10 degrees, and then some sunshine tomorrow. Across the south, we're seeing 9 degrees from Brandon all the way down to Dauphin, and nearby areas expecting smoky skies today with highs around 22, 23. It's also going to stay smoky into the evening. Further north, Flin Flon, Thompson, Churchill, the smoke continues, especially in the Flin Flon area. Highs will be between 8 and 19 degrees with some sunshine in Thompson. So it's going to be smoky and hazy across the province. The smoke is going to get thick in the Red River Valley regions, and it will linger into tomorrow morning, while western Manitoba will be seeing some clearing this afternoon, but in the eastern part of the province, the smoke will continue till tomorrow afternoon. Winnipeg right now, it's 11 and smoky.
All right. Thanks very much, Abby.
Thank you.
You can now imagine how smoky it is in the fire regions, right? We were just talking actually about on social media some of the pictures, the verifiable ones, and some of the video coming out about just how dense everything is. Somebody posted yesterday, Rhonda Head, who's been in our program before. She's from Opaskwayak, I believe. But she was posting that she was on one of the roads up there that was allowable to be on. But yet a helicopter needed to kind of come in front, and the smoke was just masking everything. And yeah, just incredible scenes and times right now. All right, all the best to all the firefighters on those front lines. Sierra Sanders is here to talk about what's going on overall in the picture on the morning commute here in Winnipeg and outside the city. Good morning.
It has been a quiet morning on the commute. No calls so far on the commuter line, so things must be moving well out there. Of course, wildfires in eastern and northern Manitoba are disrupting travel on highways. So before you head out there, check Manitoba 511 for any news on closures related to highways and travel there. We still have half an hour on the show, so call the CBC commuter line if anything's slowing you down out there, 204-788-3093. Eight days ago, Premier Wab Kinew declared a state of emergency in this province, telling us that this would be, for many Manitobans, the largest evacuation in memory outside of the Red River flood in 97. Now, since then, in 8 days, more than 14,300 people have been registered with the Red Cross. That's 5,400 households. We know an estimated 17,000 people are on the move from north to south. And still, there are 27 fires that are burning in Manitoba. There's 162 people on the front lines fighting the flames. The Premier is here for our regular monthly interview, which today is obviously devoted to the crisis in the wildfires. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me back.
How long ago does 8 days feel in your mind?
Oh, well, there's certainly been a lot going on. And you think about the wildfire fighters who are up all night in so many communities across our province. You think about the pilots, the support folks on the ground, the evacuees who've been so patient, being transported and finding their way to shelter. Yeah, it's been long days for so many people in our province, and I just want to give a shout out to Manitobans for stepping up and donating to the Red Cross and donating clothing, donating food, donating their time, finding so many different ways to help out. So it's been one of those kind of encouraging parts of a very challenging 8 days. And, you know, the numbers have continued to grow even from the update that you shared there. We're closer to about 16,800 people registered now. And keep in mind, not everyone registers with us. Mm-hmm. You know, some folks, they just make the decision they're going to stay with family and, you know, they don't necessarily register. And so the number, we were saying 17,000. Now I think we can safely assume it's north of that number now.
Okay. You wanted to mention that there's a federal program that's matching donations to the Red Cross.
Yeah, we, the province of Manitoba and the federal government are going to be matching your donations to the Red Cross. It's been so great to see people step up and ask, how can I help? It's like the most Manitoban of instincts. And basically with this, each dollar that you donate will be matched by a provincial dollar and a federal dollar. So if you donate $1 to the Red Cross, it becomes $3 in terms of impact. And this has been a joint effort with the province of Saskatchewan. I believe the province of Saskatchewan is doing the same thing on their side. So really thinking about a response across the prairies. Manitobans are stepping up. You're being very generous, which is our nature. It is your nature. And I just wanted to share the news that there'll be this $15 million contribution from the province. I believe Saskatchewan's doing the same thing. And then the federal government contributing up to $35 million. So if you do have that ability to help monetarily and you're so inclined, your donations impact will be multiplied.
I have a number of things to walk through here. I'm wondering where the most urgent firefighting situation is this morning.
Well, it continues to be in northern Manitoba with Pimichigamak, Flin Flon, the areas around Puckawagan, Snow Lake, and Split Lake. And then, of course, in the east, we still are dealing with a very, very large fire in that part of the province. So if you think over the past few days, firefighters who've, let's take Flin Flon as one example, have been able to protect the city itself while also making sure that they're in the outlying areas, cottage country on the Manitoba side. Past few days were Creighton on the Saskatchewan side. We're getting a really challenging situation. They were able to go help out. The Office of Fire Commissioner and others were able to go help out there. That's been huge. People in a community like Puckawagan who have been up around the clock, boots on the ground, protecting their community alongside local fire departments from communities like Carberry in the south who are there helping to respond. It's something that we all just got to be very thankful of their heroism and their efforts.
Mayor George Fontaine, to a couple of specifics of Flin Flon yesterday, said firefighters and emergency personnel left back there. I think there's 250 of them in community. They need food. They need help administering. They're burning out. They said there's grocery stores kind of being raided because people are trying to find food. He did say he reached out to you. I'm wondering if there's an update or what might be happening there to help.
Yeah, no, I've been speaking to George Mayor Fontaine pretty much throughout the past week. And this issue in particular is something that he raised and I followed up immediately on. And I think the update is there's food continually being moved into the community, and the Office of the Fire Commissioner has a plan to prepare those meals and make sure that people get fed.
What help do we need this morning in Manitoba? Either in equipment, fighting fires, volunteers? Premier, what do we need in Manitoba?
Well, I think the uncertainty we have right now is how long is this going to last? And so that's why we have done this cost-sharing matching donation thing with the federal government towards the Red Cross, because people have left communities like Pimichigamak, Flin Flon, Puckawagan, Snow Lake, and many others, Tatasquiac. But how long are they going to be out of their homes? And so the ability to step up and sustain folks, we're now moving into a part of the response where not only are we housing and feeding people, we're also providing that additional layer of response, psychosocial supports for people's challenges around mental health because it's been so stressful, as one example. The security concerns. We don't want people to be preyed upon by bad actors in the city of Winnipeg, as one example. And so having the police, but also the Bear Clan, DCSP, those type of community helpers on hand. We're planning around that. So again, Manitobans have been extraordinary in terms of the generosity and the commitment to step up. I fully encourage all those efforts, encourage people to donate and to continue to cooperate with the local authorities, whether that's municipal, First Nation, Northern Affairs, or otherwise.
I want to build on two things you said there. So first of all, you were talking about the, the provincial emergency social services, the ongoing, the food, shelter expenses, moving forward here. What do people need to know about that? You said you're working on it. Is there a place people can already call to understand how much coverage they'll have, or is this still a moving target right now?
I believe there'll be a round of per diems going out today. Again, this has been going out, just to zoom out for a quick second, a community like Lynn Lake has already renewed their state of emergency.
For 30 days they've been in that,
So for people
right?
in Lynn Lake, it's been more than a month, right? And, you think about the mayor and the other firefighters on the ground there who've been battling this thing since then. This is amazing. So just to give context, when we think back to Lac du Bonnet and some of those areas that were really hard hit early on, they have been getting emergency social services. Folks in some of those areas in that part of the province, eastern Manitoba, may have gotten 3 rounds of ESS before returning home. So just to give that context, context that it's different for each different region. But some of the areas where you would have seen a lot of the attention paid over this past week, I think there'll be a round of per diems going out today. I can provide an update that we got, more than 1,700 rooms with families in them. There's about another 200 coming online today. So the number of people staying in the shelters has dramatically increased, and at this point, it's just about matching. We have additional communities like, say, St. Teresa Point and the other Inisininu communities who are evacuating due to smoke their medical patients and people who are very vulnerable. And so it's a bit of a balancing act between getting people into shelter and making sure that we keep some rooms open when those really high priority medical patients come into the city.
Got it. So the 1,700 number you're referring to, is that the number of evacuees there at the shelter that's grown, or is that
the
rooms?
Red Cross. That's rooms through the Red Cross. Keep in mind, organizations like MKO have booked rooms independently of that number. You also have First Nations like Norway House, which have their own apartment buildings in the city, and so they've been housing their own people. And the MMF. Yesterday, I actually visited a family from Puckawagan who's being housed in Michif Manor. Very beautiful young family, 3 kids, all very young, and they're getting assistance from the MMF. So the number I'm providing there is just Red Cross hotel rooms, but keep in mind that the number of people who are out of their homes and are being housed in different arrangements is much, much larger.
Yeah, and that's people that are in those rooms. That's not open rooms from the Red Cross, 1,700.
No, the open room is the number of open rooms is 200.
200. Yeah. And as you said, you're holding for people that might be in emergency
situations. It's a balancing
situations.
act. We're moving some existing evacuees and then some newly arriving evacuees in there.
So, Premier, you also brought up this, and so did Chief David Monius of Pimicikamak. He says people are worried about the potential for exploitation of evacuees in Winnipeg, especially at large shelters like the soccer complex on Leela. We heard similar concerns in Thompson. We heard some remarking on racist comments about evacuees in online spaces. Mm-hmm. What's the provincial government doing to make sure people are safe in the shelters? You alluded to police, and then what would you say to people about... your first comment in all of this was welcome people. I'm just wondering if you want to build on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, our responsibility to keep Manitobans safe means keeping people safe from wildfires in the first instance. But once folks are displaced, to ensure that their safety in their new or temporary homes where people are going to be living. It is one of the very disturbing things about this that even in the midst of the vast, vast majority of Manitobans stepping up and donating or volunteering, that there is a small group of people who are also trying to show up and prey on evacuees. And you can let your mind wander to some of the really bad behaviors that this might encompass. So what we've done is to work with Winnipeg Police Service here in the city to ensure that if there's a criminal act going on, there's going to be accountability. Somebody's going to get arrested. But there's also First Nation safety officers. So we're working with the law enforcement arm that many First Nations have, because in some cases there's more familiarity or there's more of a cultural match, if you will, cultural competency in terms of the response there, whether that's de-escalation or just being able to relate. And then there's what in the city you've probably heard Mayor Gillingham or others talk about a fourth layer of response, meaning the DCSP, the Bear Clan, the initiative, OPK, people like that. So we've been working with them to ensure that they're there. In some cases, it's that security layer, insulating security layer around people to protect them from bad actors. In other cases, this is about somebody struggling. And we do have crisis stabilization unit, public health nurses, and the medical professionals at each of these shelter sites and reception centers. But sometimes you just want somebody who's maybe more of a peer, somebody who's maybe just that relatable voice that you can talk to and debrief.
So you're adding some resources around the evacuation centers?
Yes, definitely.
I'm going to get you to put
and then there's security guards too.
Yeah, I'm going to get you, Premier, to put your headphones on if that's okay. We do have a clip to play for you, and this presses on a bit of something. You were talking about Manitoba, Kiwetinoki, Okimakanak, MKO. Sheena Garrick is from that organization. She was talking to guest host Margot Watt at CBC. She was with evacuees from both Pimicikamak, Cree Nation, and Puckawagan, and this was as they got settled in Niagara Falls, and she's critical of how we're handling things. This is just a short clip.
They're doing great. They're happy here. They're being well taken care of. There's lots of supports here, medical-wise, and they have hot meals. mental health. Like there's just everything. Like there's so much support out there. I'm very happy and grateful. Ontario picked this up and they're doing an awesome job.
And what about the Manitoba government?
They're doing what they can, but I honestly can say they can do a lot better because Ontario stepped up huge.
I'm wondering what your reaction is to that. I know that Manitoba in the past has stepped up for Ontario as well. Things are moving very quickly, but there are questions about, why Manitobans are in Ontario. I know my colleague Adrian Arsenault, had asked you about this. You said you ideally would have everybody back here. So what are your thoughts on that assessment? And were we unprepared for the scale of this? Is that why people are not finding the same supports that they might be finding in other provinces?
That is the Manitoba response, just to be clear. Like, we have hired this private firm, Expira, to manage our response, and they found rooms in Niagara. So for context, earlier in this same wildfire season, Ontario didn't have rooms, and we housed more than 1,000 Ontario evacuees here. And then they were eventually repatriated to that province. So I think one of the things that we're seeing this year is that we have to have a pan-provincial, a national response, just given the scale of the emergency that we're facing, Saskatchewan faces, Ontario and Alberta now increasingly are facing. So again, the ability to get people within 1 week out of harm's way into shelters in the first instance and then into hotel rooms with the sort of wraparound supports that you need to keep people safe, I think is a testament to the amazing work that our emergency management folks have done, along with really strong partners like MKO, like the MMF, like municipal leaders across northern Manitoba.
What are the lessons out of this about what we need to do in Manitoba moving forward? And I appreciate we're still in this moment of crisis. Around equipment for the North to be better prepared, and maybe around having that wraparound stuff when evacuees land here, already in place. Are those some of the areas we have to work on?
Well, the equipment needs that have been identified have been provided. Even before those concerns were reported in media, we had responded to, I think, most of them. So I think the focus that I would highlight are two things. One is we are in a new reality when it comes to wildfires, right? Typically, we would have one part of the province dealing with challenges. And you'd remember this previously, like there'd be maybe two communities on evacuation in other summers. This year, it's every region at the same time. Right? So that's one thing that we need to plan for in the future. And then the second thing that's really stood out is misinformation. It is striking during a state of emergency how quickly false claims can make their way around social media that actually pull away time and resources from people who would otherwise be coordinating an evacuation effort or responding to the actual wildfires themselves. So again, I realize people are driven by stress in some cases, and in other cases by a compassionate response to try and get information out there. But again, like you think about the community of Flin Flon, to have the added stress of some false information being shared on social media there, I think was counterproductive. So for us, I think, again, we're trying to get information out. Later today, we're going to be launching a portal, which will be a trusted source of information on fires, where to find evacuation supports, how can you help in the response here, along with that donation initiative to match your donations to the Red Cross. So these are things that we're learning in real time that we have to respond to. And the social media era that we're in demands that we, I think, take steps to combat misinformation as well.
We're in news time, but also having news on with the Premier live on CBC. Wildfire saying later today a portal that will have information for evacuees and for updates on the fires will be created, and we'll learn more about that. I'm just wondering, yes or no, whether or not there's plans before you go here. I want to ask you to have daily briefings similar to what happened during the pandemic or the flood of 97. Whether
it won't be daily, but today you will see the first of a regular scheduled series of briefings. So I believe you'll see Ministers Naylor, who's in charge of the emergency order, and Bushy, who's in charge of the wildfire service, alongside Kristen and Christine, who you've seen at briefings with me previously.
Okay, so some changes coming. 8 days. Wow, it's hard to believe what's happened in our province.
Well, thanks so much for helping us get the message out and for bringing the voices forward of people who are dealing with such a stressful, challenging time.
Thank you for being here, Premier.
Thank you.
Premier Wildfire in Manitoba. Let's go live now to Heather Wells to pick up more of what's developing in our news this morning.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I am Heather Wells. It is 8:32. We've got smoke out there, and we are under an air quality warning in Winnipeg. Right now we're at 10 degrees, a little on the cool side. We warm up to 23 with widespread smoke today. Federal Cabinet Minister Rebecca Chartrand harassed a former employee when she worked at RRC Polytech in Winnipeg. That is according to an external investigation commissioned by the college. Documents provided to CBC News show Chartrand was investigated in 2019 when she directed Indigenous strategy at Red River College. In December of that year, the investigation concluded Chartrand's conduct amounted to harassment. Chartrand resigned from the college that same month. The former employee, who CBC is not identified, says she tried to make this known to Liberal Party officials before Chartrand was elected MP for Churchill-Kiiwetinoong-Aski.
Happened to me, happened to anybody in Ottawa. I didn't want Marc Carney to be hurt by any further actions, whether it be something of this nature ever happen again.
In a statement, a spokesperson for Chartrand says she is committed to fostering a healthy work environment. RRC Polytech says it does not discuss personnel matters. The Manitoba Nurses Union is speaking out against a provincial order to relax some labour mobility rules. Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera ordered the College of Registered Nurses to drop a rule that nursing applicants from other provinces first prove they have worked in Canada. When it did so almost 3 years ago, 2 patients died, and there were 35 complaints of gross nursing incompetence. The college later reinstituted the rule. MNU President Darlene Jackson says that rule improves patient safety.
Ensuring someone else has worked in another venue in Canada, has worked those hours, gives me more comfort knowing that they have skills for a Canadian system.
And Asseguera says the government takes complaints seriously, but Manitoba needs more nurses. And outside applicants, Asseguera says, should get more training instead of being denied a nursing license. A woman from Snow Lake says she wasted no time packing up and getting out. That community is on a voluntary evacuation order because of a massive wildfire to the north moving quickly. 2 days ago, Jamie Flutie says she got into a camper with her toddler and dog and started heading south.
So we got prepared and left. And by the time we hit the road, they had put out the voluntary evacuation because most of my family is from Plumflaw, Creighton, Denair Beach. So kind of knew how things were going and wanted to kind of get ahead of it.
Many homes in Denair Beach, Saskatchewan, have been destroyed by fire. Flutie says she feels she was lucky in that she had time to get as much stuff packed as she did. She's not sure when she will be able to return home again. A Winnipeg woman is suing 2 doctors she says put her at risk of premature death. The woman was told she had 6 months to live after cancer had metastasized through her body. But in a lawsuit, she claims the spread of cancer from her lungs to other organs could have been prevented. Last year, the woman had a CT scan done to screen for lung cancer. After the results came, she was diagnosed with other respiratory diseases, but not cancer. The lawsuit says symptoms worsened, a second scan was done, and she was diagnosed with cancer in January. The woman claims her cancer could have been treatable had it been diagnosed after that first scan. She is suing for general damages, including medical costs. None of the allegations have been tested in court. No statement of defense has been filed. And the future of an affordable housing project in Transcona is in question. The Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation applied for $25 million from the Federal Affordable Housing Fund. Last week, Executive Director James Heinrichs learned that fund was out of money. He says losing the money could delay the project, putting other government funding at risk. You can read more on these stories on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks very much, Heather. Quick last look at the weather, Abby.
It's going to be smoky across the province with poor air quality. Southern Manitoba stays smoky, highs near 23. Northern Manitoba, we're going to see Flin-Flon still having more smoke. Western Manitoba, that smoke should clear this afternoon, while for the Red River and eastern part of the province, we'll see smoke into tomorrow. Winnipeg, warming up to 23.
Thanks to Megan Ketchison, to Aaron Broman and Heather Wells, our news department, our live team, Corey Funk, Sarah Sanders, Brad Lillies, and Abby Adiyemi. Also, thanks to the associate producers that worked on today's show, Chidi Akuma, Donna Carrero, producer Donna Carrero, and Jenna Bedosso. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Take care, be well, everyone. Stay safe, and we will talk to you once again tomorrow on CBC's Information Radio.